Hey guys, and welcome back to Divulgence. We have the wonderful Habsburg Jolly West in the house, and of course, my other brother Adam from the TruthDesk, my favorite trio, including myself. What's going on, guys? So good to see you, man.
Happy
Both
happy
of you.
Friday, happy holiday. Yeah.
Happy Friday, happy belated Canada Day, happy pre-Independence Day, 4th of July. A lot going on. What have you guys got planned for 4th of July? Anything cool, Habsburg?
Um Either tomorrow or Sunday we're gonna go to the horse race track in Grants Pass and
Nice.
go watch the ponies, bet the pony.
Attaboy. Right on, man.
Yeah.
You should watch The Killing by Stanley Kubrick beforehand. Get in the
Okay.
vibe.
Okay. Fair enough.
It's a horse track heist movie, and it's like amazing. And I think that's where they got the inspiration to do the bank heist scene in The Dark Knight with the Joker wearing the clown mask and all that stuff. And yeah, really cool stuff. Anyways, Adam, what about you, man? Are you hanging with the boy, or what do you guys got going on for the fourth?
Just gonna go to my parents and see if they bought some fireworks. If not, just grill out and have some beers. Fireworks are really, really expensive. I mean, it's literally
Just gonna
lighting
ask
money
you
on fire. So, yeah, I mean, like these tents pop up everywhere. So, like every town's different. My town, being a true American town, we allow fireworks stands in the city limits, and you can also shoot fireworks off in the city limits too. But it's like you just get enough for like 20, 30 minutes. It's like $100.
that. Okay.
150. So, but
Um,
you can go after the 4th of July and they usually have
a
50,
sale.
60,
Right.
70% discount. Yeah, that's
That's
where you
when you
load up
do
on the fireworks or get some mortar shells and
it.
yeah.
Okay. Nice.
It's gnarly here because of the wildfire risk. When people do it, it's like, it's a high risk situation when people are like doing fireworks around here, and it's not in like a controlled way because this part of Southern Oregon, Northern California, we just have like insane fires. So
Fair enough. Fair enough. The city here, for whatever fucking reason, they don't do fireworks down at the marina anymore. They used to have a really nice show and everything, but the other night, my neighbor, a few not too far down, I guess he just did them in his backyard, and like he honestly had them going for at the very least, I'd say an hour, but maybe even like closer to 90 minutes. And I was like, that must have been so expensive. And they were just, it wasn't like one went off and then you wait a couple seconds and then another one off. Like he was probably lighting and lighting, like they just kept going off. It was a really good show. I could only like, fuck, it must have been a few $1,000, man. Um, Canadian dollars, anyways. It's
hey, if
crazy
you
though.
got it, flaunt it.
Yeah, man, exactly. Like, have fun with it. Like, if I was rich, that's how I if I wanted to flaunt my money, I'd try to do something fun and kind of joyous, and if in this case for the people, and yeah, it's cool. So props to that guy. Uh,
Fireworks are cool. Like they
they
actually
are,
like
man.
are really really
The
cool.
science behind it, the visuals, it's just a good time. It's nice. I enjoy it. I do. And it's lame when you have to like it's like the Joe Dirt when you have to settle for snakes and sparklers. It's like it's not the same, right? You
Yep.
want your big boys.
Or
So
like, when like how long is it going to be before they're like, oh yeah, we're not doing that, we're just putting up like little drone shows and stuff like that in most places, like, you know what I
well,
mean?
yeah, man. A few shows ago, I was talking about drone shows with my guest, and I mean they could do so much with those drone shows. Like they can make it look really beautiful and interesting, or they can make it look like a big cat. We were looking at one where like a big cat was playing around the city like Godzilla. You would have loved it, Hadsburg. And it's like, wow, man, like that's very impressive. That's very impressive because um, it's not like a projection or like individual lights. It's like all individual drones, and they have to move in sync and all that. It's pretty crazy. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see yeah, if it completely knocks fireworks out of the thing. But I mean, you're still gonna have people like my neighbor and people like ourselves who want to have some fun with fireworks, right? So you'd hope that it wouldn't eliminate them altogether or make it like such a rare thing that you gotta like, I don't know.
Yeah,
Very
I hope it doesn't like, replace, like, I mean, I definitely have seen like cool looking, at least videos. I've never seen them in person where they do these drone displays, but like there's just something, fireworks or something that, yeah, something they're special. People have been like engineering these things with, like these, analog physical components for, for so long, and figuring out how to make them do these really
yeah.
remarkable things, right? That like, drones that like, you're just pressing some button. I mean, it's cool, but like somebody's just doing do, 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 and it's doing
That's
it. But
true.
like the,
That's true. Yeah.
fireworks are
You
like,
can
man, somebody had to figure out how to pack all of that stuff in to make it,
Yeah, and it
do
makes
those.
like you can get one like I remember like somewhere it makes like a maple leaf, even something as
Yeah,
interesting
dude.
as a maple leaf. It's like, okay, wait, how the hell did they do that? Like, so yeah, man, I totally agree. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
it's the Chinese. The Chinese invented fireworks. The Chinese invented guns, gunpowder, pyrotechnics.
Powder.
I mean, there's nothing more American than celebrating the birth of the nation by blowing a small piece of it up.
That's right, man.
With
That's
Chinese shit.
Yeah, yeah,
Chinese engineering. Oh, geez, that's cool, man. Well, since I mean, we were going to start with something else, but since we're talking about Independence Day, um, I saw, I'll pull it up here, an article about nearly half Americans polled in this poll say they don't even know what they're celebrating. Um, and then another article that is more so just interesting because of the numbers. Just talks about how the 250-year climb of debt, essentially, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. It's pretty wild. So I kind of was just curious as to I wanted to go around the horn and just ask you two, what are your thoughts this year on July 4th? Making this having this celebration. What kind of thoughts go around in your mind about being patriotic, loving your country? What you kind of wish for the country. Do you feel like you should be celebrating? Stuff like that. Go as deep as you want. Adam, let's start with you, man.
Well, it is, this 250th birthday of the country is coming on the heels of us losing the Iran war, essentially, which we'll get into later. But,
Right.
It's, you bring up the debt too. There's patterns that come along with the end of every great empire. And it's not just the British Empire. There's been other empires. There's been the Dutch Empire, the Spanish Empire. There's Middle Eastern empires like the Ottoman Empire, but they all have the Roman Empire. They all come with the accumulation of debt, dumb, costly foreign wars, and the devaluation of the currency. The Romans actually had to melt down their currency and add copper to it. We don't have to do that. We just have a money printer. But we are seeing the classic signs of end of empire stage here. And these foreign wars that we're getting into, I mean, I'm not a fan of colonialism or territorial expansion to, rape the indigenous populations, but at least when you do that, you get some sort of monetary benefit for the country. The wars that the US has engaged in since the 1960s have all just been pointless quagmires that cost lives, that cost the country money, that enrich defense contractors and, other oligarchs within the nation, and don't really have that much benefit to the country. So that is sad to see. There was actually one U.S. president that had zero debt, and that was Andrew Jackson. And when you look up Andrew Jackson today, it's all about the Trail of Tears and the persecution of Native Americans. And while that stuff is tragic, he was a great man in other respects. And I think when people look at founding fathers or they look at historical figures from a modern lens, I don't really think that that's fair. The same thing. There was a new Netflix documentary about Thomas Jefferson that just came out, and it was all about, oh yes, he was a great man, but of course it was all about him being a slave owner. And it's
Yeah,
like there's
yeah.
a real effort, I think, to
Netflix
like
for it.
make people feel bad about this stuff, make people ashamed of the founding fathers, make people think that these weren't. It's like Thomas Jefferson was a progressive. He advocated for, I believe, the abolition of slavery, or he thought it was a moral degradation or something like that. But I mean, he was living within the rules of the time. Like there was nothing he could really do about it himself. So without going off on too much of a thing here, I don't think that the country's on a great path. I don't see really any way that we're going to cure it, just with like a magic pill. But the debt's rising, and right now we're spending about 13% just on interest payments of the national budget. We're spending 13% of that on interest payments to the national debt, which is equal to what we spend on defense, which is more than the next 6 top countries combined. So we have a real spending problem, and it's there's no appetite to change it really. And this is exactly what you see in the fall of all great empires. So sad to see on America's 250th birthday.
Absolutely. And before I go to you, Habsburg, I'll just say that I totally agree that, I mean, history is, you can start at any point. When you're looking from today and looking back, history is dirty, it's bloody, it's been wrong, it's been crude, it's been illogical, it's been all those things. So these people that you look back on that are cherished or looked up at as role models for these reasons, of course, because of history, because of where cultures were, where societies were, where norms were. There's a lot of shitty behavior going on there, and sometimes it didn't matter who you were, right? So you kind of have to look at it from that point of view. That and I mean, look at it now. Look at the people we look up to now, man. Look how shitty they are. The celebrities, the politicians. So honestly, I don't think they're much better than the ones back in the day that were giving shit for owning slaves, because that's kind of something that happened back then, was slave ownership. But I don't have to keep going into that. But I agree, and yeah, I respect your answer, man. That's great stuff. Habsburg,
Andrew Jackson. I
Go
just
ahead.
want to add, Andrew Jackson fought really hard to keep central banks out of the country. And that's a really shitty thing that's like never really brought up, is like he ended the charter for the second bank. He erased all the debt. And it's like that conversation is always drowned out by the whole Native American Indian thing. So I just wanted to add that.
I was actually just about to say that, Adam, and
Nice.
I actually live in a town and a county that are both named after Andrew Jackson. So
Cool.
just for the record, like people around here, have some reverence.
They know.
Which is cool. Yeah, Jackson County, and like the town I live in is called Jacksonville, so that's
Nice.
pretty cool. But yeah, I mean it's tough right now to kind of like stomach everything that's going on. I think we're all pretty fed up. Watching the trajectory of events right now. And it's demoralizing. And I think that part of it, like a big part of it, if not all of it, is to like make us feel demoralized, right? And to see like, that we're, like embroiled in these like, global, international conflicts that we have no business being involved in, that we have no control over, that we're doing, things like building these data centers, and in cities they're telling people to keep their air conditioning set during heat waves at 78 degrees, but we're supposed to be sending all of our power to data centers. We're decommissioning dams for hydroelectric that would go into to the grid to power people's homes, for these crazy. That's what's happening like here in my region. They taken all these like dams out of the Klamath River, that for generate hydroelectric power for like rural people who badly need it. Taking it out for these under these like environmental pretexts, and things about like the native tribes and their access to salmon and things like that, and diverting the power that is being generated to data centers. I don't want to get fixated on that kind of thing, but this is what's happening. Like the people are being like um increasingly like our our power as citizens, our voice, it's being diminished. Like we're being outranked by powerful, much more powerful entities that have no regard for us, and for like the overwhelming public sentiment is against these things, right? I mean, people like by and large are not for the wars, are not for these data centers, are not for the debt spending, for all of these things. And it's just more and more it feels like these things are like out of our hands. We certainly can't like vote our way out of it. And it's that's been proven time again, and people are becoming like disillusioned with that, which they should. But this is what's going on, and it's tough. And when you see like these like conspicuous displays of like you know um whatever, it's the like the Roman bread and circus, like what Adam was talking about at the end of Empire, how they keep people in line with the bread and circus things. You have the MMA fights and the World Cup, and meanwhile like everything is getting everything else is getting flushed down the toilet. The fair and all this stuff, all these like conspicuous displays of whatever. When the truth is that life is getting so much harder for everybody, and
Yes,
things
yeah.
are so expensive. People can't people can't afford anything. And we're supposed to like look at this stuff and feel some kind of like you know national pride for seeing blood sport on the White House lawn, things like that. Like it's the gladiators in the Colosseum, from ancient Rome. I mean, it's pretty fucked up. Let's be honest. Like
Yeah.
what's going on. So that's sort of my 2 cents. At the quadricentennial millennial, whatever 250 years is. It's it's pretty fucked up, man.
Well, and one thing that always happens at the end of empire is the wealth gap between the common people and the elites. And that's one thing that the Federal Reserve does, and usury and people that make money off of interest, not just banking interest, but dividends on stock markets. You have a slow leaching of money from the bottom to the top. And the Federal Reserve, since its creation in 1913, I think it's devalued the dollar by like 97%. Inflation is just a slow tax on people that don't own assets, that don't own stocks or property or other investment vehicles. If you just own labor or cash, those are the two things that appreciate the slowest. And that's another classic sign of end of empire, which, I mean, that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing rampant inflation and this huge wealth gap that we have in the country now.
I hear steak is really expensive right now over there. You guys big steak eaters? Have you noticed that price hike yet? I heard that steak's just been more
Dude,
as of
Dude,
recent?
I have a relationship with my local ranchers. I buy like a
Oh,
half
oh,
beef
you're
every
good.
year, all grass fed, grass finished, so I don't I got freezers full.
So you got a nice steak dinner waiting for me, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. So
Hmm.
that's
Cool. What about you,
um
Adam? Are you a steak eater? Are you have you heard
I
it
love
from
steak.
family
Yes.
members? Anything? Okay. What do you
Yep. I
hear?
love steaks. Yeah, definitely. I mean, just for it's like $10 a pound for something that you could maybe sear up and grill without having to pound the shit out of it to tenderize it. $20. Yeah, that's
That's
where
very
I am, you could maybe get maybe an 8-10 ounce steak for like $10. But I mean, even ground beef is like $8 or so. So yeah, I have been eating more chicken lately because all the hormones and antibiotics, and they can pump up a chicken in a few weeks, and it's a lot cheaper at the store. Plus, they got the screw worm back, the flesh-eating screw worm. I've
oh
heard
yeah,
that came from
we
maybe
were talking about
immigrants,
that.
which that's a crazy story. The screw worm, they release it breeds once a year, and so they release sterile males. They pushed it all the way down to the Darien Gap, which is the small little narrow chunk in Panama, between North and South America. They eradicated that screw worm all the way down there, and then they would just release sterile male screw worms so that the females couldn't mate. Well, with all the mass migration that we had, these people coming from South America brought, at least that's the story I heard, is they brought with them this New World screwworm, which is it's like a larva that infects an open wound of a cattle, burrows its way, eats it, and then pops out. That was found in, I think, New Mexico and Texas. So I think that scare kind of jolted beef prices a little bit. That was just a few
Oof,
weeks ago.
dang, okay, that's kind of freaky. Dang. Okay.
so what I mean, I with the screw worm, is that something that like infects human hosts? And I mean, what are the
It can.
repercussions? Yeah.
It can. It mostly affects cattle.
Yeah.
A human, you're gonna notice, an open wound that's festering and something
But
wiggling around in there. But
you
cattle,
can
it's
contract it from eating infected beef, presumably.
you have to have an open wound, and the
Oh,
fly
okay.
has to lay an egg in it.
Uh,
So it's not super common for humans to get it, but for cattle that are just out on the pasture, I guess it's a bit more easy. I don't know. I'm not a rancher. I just know that I heard that is one thing that kind of shocked beef prices was this random parasite that was eradicated in the 60s all of a sudden showing back up.
that's not, it's not totally surprising that that's happening. There's, I mean, isn't there also like some gnarly parasite that's that's been in the news, that's been going around like in the Northeast and Midwest and stuff?
I think you're right, actually.
I heard something about that. I mean,
I don't know. I just did a thing on my channel
Oh,
on
the
Lyme disease and alpha gal, which is a crazy those tick-borne illnesses, which is pretty wild.
oh yeah, yeah, okay. We were talking about that. Are Habsburg? Are you talking about the explosive diarrhea
yeah,
parasite?
right.
Doesn't sound
Yeah,
fun.
that don't sound fun, man. Like diarrhea is not fun to begin with, but explosive diarrhea,
Mm.
like that. I mean, that's no
So
good,
I
man.
mean, like right. So like how like how long is it going to be before they like say, oh, we've like linked this to tainted cattle? And I mean, like obviously we know that part of this sustainable development goal, UN, blah blah whatever, is getting rid of beef and like the cattle ranching, and finding different ways, different pretexts to demonstrate that it's harmful. So like it wouldn't surprise me if they're like, oh yeah, explosive diarrhea from eating beef, things like that.
Well, yeah, and there was that big push to like ban or curtail cattle because they fart and produce methane,
Right,
and that's bad for
Right.
global warming. Like, what the
right.
fuck is that? Bill Gates was kind of heavy into that. So it does seem like there is kind of an assault on beef. I mean, if you look historically, the rise of civilizations happens because people have access to cheaper food, and that's one of the limiting things is, you need land to ranch these cattle and stuff. And I'm sure the elites would like to have some kind of 3D printed mashed up insect meat for people to eat that you can grow in a factory and, more controllable. And
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think that like that beef, I mean, obviously is something, like having access to it is something that, it's a superfood. I mean, it makes people like, healthier, stronger, more resilient, happier, like you're happy when you have beef. When you don't have access to foods like that, I mean, it's, it's like a emotional, mental, like drain. It's a net negative, and not just nutritionally, but you just don't feel as good. So
mm,
I think that this is, I think that this is stuff that, is totally by design. And anyways, like it doesn't surprise me to hear that there's, this spread of this screw worm. I wouldn't be surprised if there's, some way of like linking the, this explosive diarrhea stuff to the beef supply, and using that to propagandize people, against eating beef, or to use that as a pretext to like kill off, cattle. We've seen that with things like, hoof and mouth, and things like this, where they've, like found reasons to, um, kill off, mass amounts of livestock. So
yeah, well, and alpha gal, like me and Jordan talked about, a few times ago. Well, alpha gal is an allergy that you get to red meat as an allergic reaction from a tick bite of a Lone Star tick, and that has increased. It was first described in the 80s, and since then it's increased. I think the last 10 years or so, it's had a 10,000% increase. And like I was telling Jordan, the Lone Star tick's always been around. It's been here. People never reported this strange meat allergy, and now all of a sudden here it is. And the US government does have a sketchy history with tick-borne diseases, like with Lyme disease, which is basically 100% proven that it originated from the Plum Island Disease and Research Center off the coast of Long Island, in New York. So mm, is that part of the, what you're talking about, trying to get people to move away from beef? I mean, if you have even a small percentage of the country that just can't eat, and it's not just beef, it's any red meat, it's pork, it's lamb, it's the only thing you can eat is chicken or fish or Bill Gates's 3D printed bug meat. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's really serious. And I think that I think that's just like a big thing, that the alpha gal is, I personally, I haven't known any. I don't know if you guys have anybody that's contracted it, but I definitely know people that have gotten Lyme disease, and and in a lot of parts of the country, it goes undiagnosed, because it's considered to be like not common enough to where, people, like doctors aren't testing for it. And I know people that like suffered for like years, and were, like on their deathbed and being told like, oh, you have MS, and like different things like that, and you just have like some degenerative neurological disorder that you're going to die from. Turns out like, oh, they actually had undiagnosed Lyme disease and were able to recover. But it's even like, even in parts of the country where they routinely will test you for it if you present certain types of symptoms, like the primary test for Lyme disease is, it shows a 51% false negative, like that. And it's
really,
like, what? Yes. And it actually happened to my father last year, and
Oh
he
man,
like
sorry.
yeah, my father, like got incredibly, sick, like near death, because he had Lyme disease that was undiagnosed. He was bit by a tick in upstate New York, and like went and took a test, and because the test is unreliable, which, like, why would that be? Why would that be the go-to, primary test, if it's more often than not shows a false negative when somebody's
mm,
actually, has the infection? I mean, you can't figure this stuff out. He was presenting all these symptoms, and I was like, I think he has Lyme disease, and he didn't get retested until, he was like in, admitted into the Mayo Clinic, like on, like in a serious, like, near death kind of situation. And they retested him and was like, yeah, they like the secondary test, the more advanced one is more reliable, but for some reason they use, this unreliable test, even in parts of the country where, people are likely to have it. So
Yeah.
Oh my God.
yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, man. That is, you think like medical tech and standards and abilities would just be so much better than you think sometimes. That's wow, man. And I hope your dad is doing much better.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, fortunately he's recovered, but the point being that, like, if Lyme disease is prevalent, I mean, and it's prevalent like all over the country. It's, if they're not testing for it, if they're, doctors aren't, being, like, encouraged to test for it and use the more reliable tests. It's such like a rapidly, degenerative, aggressive, condition. It doesn't make sense, why it's not like being, more readily diagnosed and, more readily addressed. I mean, it's bizarre.
I actually have here. I can present this real quick, Jordan. This is
Yep.
the map that we looked at last time, where it shows
Oh
the
yeah,
the spread
pull
of
that up.
Lyme disease. I only have two, but yeah, you can see there. So Long Island, New York, is where this Plum Island Disease Institute was, and you can see it's basically spreading as that exact epicenter. And like Habsburg mentioned, it's all over the country now. It's mainly in the Northeast, but it is spreading. The Here I will just throw up most recent map. This is 2023 right here. Um, if you want to throw that up, Jordan. So yeah, it's coming. It's
Oh
much more.
wow.
I mean, you see it out there in the western states as well. So it's, yeah, and that arrow is where the Plum Island Disease Research Institute was. But yeah,
Okay.
it's getting thick. It started in the late 70s, early 80s, and it's becoming quite the epidemic. And it's not really talked about a whole lot, but
That's wild. That's a
No,
slow sweep, but a
and
steady.
and
yeah.
and I know like 3 people in Oregon that, like I said, they got it here and it went undiagnosed for years, and, like, had insanely horrible consequences, like young men, like, my age, that got it, that, became like, essentially, invalids. I mean, were so debilitated that they, like, couldn't move, couldn't get out of bed, things like that, because doctors here just, like, weren't told that, like, hey, you need to actually test them, like, hey, it happens here.
Yeah. I actually just this is crazy. After that show we did, Jordan, talking about ticks, my son came in my room. He was getting ready for bed. He's like, Dad, he's like, I think I got like a mole on the back of my head. Can you check it? He had the biggest tick I have
Shut
ever
up,
seen
dude.
on a
Are you
human
kidding
being.
me?
It Yeah, yeah.
Oh
Most time
my
you get bit by a
God.
tick, you feel it. It's like in the early stages. This tick, he said, it had been back there for 2 weeks. It was engorged. I'm like, dude, this thing's getting ready to drop off you and lay eggs.
So gnarly.
Yeah.
What?
It was like what you'd pull off a dog or something, I was like, I felt so bad for him. It gave me the heebie-jeebies. I was like, "Oh."
Yeah, man. That's ooh weird
Mm.
timing too. Holy cow. Ooh,
Yeah,
man.
weird timing, yeah. I
He's
pulled it
doing
off
okay.
him, and I took it outside, and I hit it with a blowtorch.
There
It
you go.
exploded. It exploded
Oh,
because I had so much of his blood in it.
Yeah, I
that's
mean, it's
big,
good that
man.
you were able to, like, actually pull it off, because a lot of times, when they've been attached for so long, you can, like, pull off part of them, and part of them will, like, stay in there, and that can cause, like,
Mhm.
beyond just Lyme disease, that can cause, like, serious infection. I've seen that before too, where people, like, they pull it off, and, part of it is still in there, and, they get, like, you know flesh infection from it. Anyway,
Yeah,
it's
I
gnarly,
checked
dude.
it. They have two pincers. They're like arachnids,
Yeah.
like spiders. So I checked the tick and it had its two pincers on it. So yeah, that was good. Arachnids just suck. Arachnids are spiders, ticks, mites, scorpions. It's like all these shitty insects are all arachnids, or not insects, but creatures.
Well, and and it's really interesting too. Oh God, Jesus. These things that like feed off of human blood or like other I mean there's something like spiritually so dark about it too,
Oh
right?
yes.
Ticks and like
Oh
bed
gosh,
bug,
don't click on that.
things like that. Oh geez.
What?
There's
That's got to
something
be
just
AI.
that's got to
That's
be.
got to be fake. That's
But you know what I mean? There's just something, something so like, evil and vampiric about their like very nature, that to subsist off of like the blood of their host. I mean, it's dark, dude.
Gosh, Jordan, you're gonna kill me, man.
right, dude. Right. Oh, man. Sometimes you just I don't know, man. I don't know. You just click and I don't know. I don't know what's clicking on, man. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. Moving on. We can move on. So let's move on to, obviously we want to talk about the MKUltra hearing, whatever you want to call it. So there was what do we got here? So a House Oversight Committee task force led by Representative Anna Paulina Luna held a congressional hearing to investigate the legacy and declassification of the CIA's Cold War era MKUltra project. The hearing focused on past medical torture, the deliberate destruction of evidence, and demands for greater intelligence, transparency. So they talked about historical medical torture, destruction of evidence, unresolved conspiracy theories, government secrecy and trust. And one thing I noticed right away was I'll go around and see what you guys saw, what you guys thought, if anything. But I mean, the witness list was pretty slim. Not only was it pretty slim, it was pretty like I mean, I don't want to say useless, but I mean, what do we got? Stephen Kinzer, he senior fellow in internal and public affairs at Brown University. So he wrote a book on Sidney Gottlieb. And then I remember seeing a clip I saw Tom O'Neill there, who of course wrote Chaos. Yeah, I've got Chaos, the Charles Manson book. There was Dr. Elizabeth Ganexi, who was a former scientific program director at the National Institutes of Health. And then the only other witness
That was it. It was just those three.
found was I have here Tracy Walder, former CIA staff operations officer. She testified that she does not believe MKUltra style research fully stopped. She stated that anything is possible regarding survival of the program's methods, noted that the CIA continued related experiments afterwards, like unsuccessful attempts using dogs for military purposes. She also criticized the document destruction as categorically wrong and a source of ongoing conspiracy theories. So, she's saying a lot. She's saying a lot there without actually saying anything, really. I mean, I'll admit I got all excited when I saw MKUltra hearing, and then reality seemed to kick in pretty damn quick. Adam, what are some of your thoughts? I know this is something that you wanted to cover. Did you watch it? Mm-hmm. Did you see any of it? Yeah, take us through it, my friend.
I did watch it. I watched most of it. To me, like, so Tom O'Neill and Stephen Kinzer, I do respect Tom O'Neill. Like you said, he wrote Chaos, and I think he's the one who really kind of blew the lid on Jolly West, who Habsburg Jolly West up there gets his part of his name from. If you guys didn't know, Habsburg jaw is a mutation or a genetic deformity of a royal family in Europe, and then the second part, Jolly West, from the scientist. But this guy Tom O'Neill, he was the one that showed that connection between Jolly West and the Haight Ashbury Free Clinic, which is obviously where Charlie Manson and his followers got free medical care. So, I mean, it is cool in the sense that like these people were kind of brought to the forefront, and maybe some people that hadn't heard of MKUltra became familiar with it through this hearing. To me, though, it's like this isn't a real. It's just kind of a PR stunt. It's just like a media thing. There's no real witnesses here, like CIA insiders or victims, or there's no new information. Stephen Kinzer and Tom O'Neill just detailed publicly available information of MKUltra, so there's no real true investigation that went on there. Elizabeth Genexi, I don't know why they brought this bitch in. She was from the National Institute of Health, and she didn't know anything about MKUltra. And just like some senators got some sound bites calling out COVID, I don't want to say conspiracies because it's true things that they were saying, like, talking about how COVID came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And, of course, Elizabeth Genexi was like, no, I don't think so. But it just made for some sexy sound bites for these senators. And of course, we have Rep Luna at the middle of this again. And I don't remember who it was I heard say this. It might have been Habsburg, or it might have been somebody else said that Rep Luna is like always at the center of all these like cool, sexy things that Congress is doing, like UFOs, UAPs. And I had that in the back of my mind while watching this, because she is, she's beautiful. She does have these cool things that she's always talking about, but she doesn't strike me as someone who's super intelligent. She's always reading from a sheet. She's just kind of like a figurehead, for all this stuff going on. So I thought it was cool to have this stuff in the national dialogue again, but it was just kind of a waste of time, really, if you're looking for new information about MKUltra. It pales in comparison to the actual church committee, from the 1970s, where they were actually bringing in people from the CIA. They were grilling them. They were asking these questions. They were exposing things like the heart attack gun to the public. This wasn't anything like that. This was just a nice little media thing where people can clip it and throw it on YouTube and X, and
with authors.
And we're at a point, we're far enough away historically from that where most of the people that were involved are dead at this point, that were involved up to that point. I mean, I think that it's obvious that these operations, so you have like this plausible deniability of saying, oh, MKUltra like ended in whatever year, but like there are however many programs or anything else that you call it, arose by any other name, right? As Shakespeare would say. So it's like whether it's MKUltra or like any other damn thing, this mind control, and actually I think that this disclosure stuff, and I like having Luna as this figure, of kind of this kind of dissident sort of like, I'm working to like expose and divulge and the things like this, like she's playing a role, as she's a character, right? And that a lot of this stuff, it's just like we're kind of in this like the new like milieu is that it's just everything is like conspiratainment, right? It's right now, we've gotten into the in the like the post-COVID era where like everything is we're this is this conspiracy and this is that conspiracy, and instead of like really getting at anything, it's a lot of it is just like this salacious stuff where like Adam said, a lot of this is just like been in the public record for so long. I mean,
Yep.
none of this is new stuff, and now we're bringing it into the forefront because like this is like this new form of entertainment and getting people's minds adjusted to like everything's a conspiracy and really like muddying the water so that people don't really understand what's going on and are, if anything, maybe more easy to control. I think so I talk about this conspiratainment thing that's going on.
It's a good term. I like that.
Yeah, because it's like it gets yeah, I mean, it gets people engaged. It's just, it's great engagement bait. Anything is like, oh, guess what? Dun dun dun. What's that? The spooky TikTok video music.
Oh yeah, that bullshit. Yeah. I can't stand that garbage. Yeah.
So
I use
but
it. I use it on my shorts. So,
sure,
yeah.
because it's like it does the
I
trick.
love yours,
Is,
dude.
so it's this to me specifically. Now I don't know what format you guys watched it on or whatever. I tried to watch it like from the link that she posted on her Twitter, and there were these crazy audio glitches with it. Did y'all encounter that?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so here's the deal, guys. So here's the deal.
Weird,
like
dude.
yeah, that's pretty weird. No, it was so crazy, and I don't know if it rectified, but like at a certain point, I was just like, I can't like keep listening to this because it's making my brain hurt. And if you think about like what they were doing in the MKUltra experiment, they were doing so much experimentation with sounds and like layers of like sound reproduction and like that's what was that audio glitch
Adam,
in
you
the
watched the whole
fucking
thing?
video? You saw what I'm talking about, and there were like it was like layers of dialogue, like on top of itself, going blah, 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 and it was like Adam, you heard what?
Oh, Adam heard it,
right?
Adam heard it.
So I watched it on YouTube. I watched like the Forbes link, or so the audio was completely fixed. I turned on Luna's X post, and it was like there was no audio for the first 5 minutes. I'm like, well, this is stupid.
It was,
and I just clicked off and went on YouTube.
And then well, right. So there was no audio, and then once it kicked in, it was like these echoes and like layers of. It was like what these people were saying on top of layers of what they had said on top, and it was, dude, you got like play the clip. It's insane. And so you're actually like hearing these audio effects that really sound a lot like probably what they were exposing these MK ultra like subjects to in these clinical trials, when they were like giving them acid and electric current therapy and all this stuff. It was so crazy. When I was watching the video, I was like, oh well, look at what they're doing. They're like actually delivering this like MK ultra style like mind program thing in like the video of the hearings. Because like how could that be that like she posted that that it was so like fucked up, like it had to have been deliberate, that they put these audio effects on where it like literally hurts your brain, so
yeah, and that's what like a schizophrenic hears. I've heard is like they'll hear like multiple like blah, 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 like
And I think you hit the nail on the head that so much of what like this actually is like weaponizing schizophrenia and like being able to like turn on and turn off like schizophrenic responses in human beings and like splitting the mind and creating like dissociative identities and multiple personalities and that's what they were when they were originally using these like psychedelics and stuff like this. They called them schizomimetics, psychotomimetics, like things that they were like, this is emulating a schizophrenic episode. We're figuring out like how to induce schizophrenia. So, but yeah, that's exactly what that audio was like. Oh yeah, that's what a schizophrenic hears. And they're showing that was like on her official, Twitter as the Congress, a representative of Congress, and the one who is leading this inquiry. I mean, it's insane.
I would have really liked for them to at least have asked some questions. I wouldn't be so critical of it if they had brought up maybe like Tyler Robinson, who shot Charlie Kirk, maybe Thomas Matthew Crooks, who attempted to shoot Donald Trump. John Hinckley Jr., Sirhan. I mean, Jack Rubenstein. If they had brought up any of these people who are, when you look at them, it's like what. It's clear that they're like mentally disturbed and probably programmed in the way almost exactly like they wanted to do with MKUltra. They, one of the big goals was to create assassins that would just do an act, would commit this crime, through suggestion or some kind of programming. If they had brought up any of these gunmen and,
Frank
even
Olson.
discussed them, but it's like that wasn't, and I saw a clip of RFK Jr. talking about MKUltra, and RFK has brought up Sirhan is who was blamed for killing Bobby Kennedy. And he's probably, in my opinion, one of the more definitive cases of a mind control victim, because he doesn't remember the event. He's, there's lots of documentation and interviews you can look up on him. But RFK Jr., he said MKUltra, he said MK stands for mind control. Yeah, MKUltra, MK was the distinction for the most classified material in World War II. It was like a call sign that people would know that this is the most classified form of intelligence. It doesn't stand for mind control. And he should have known that. The fucking letters don't even match up. MK.
But that's what propaganda is, I mean, it's like, hey, we're building these narratives, and we're diverting the truth. I don't think it's that he doesn't know. I think he's just this is the spin, right?
Yeah, and it sucks because I really like RFK, and it's like to hear him say that, I was like, oh, dude, like come on, man, what a load of shit.
But I think that
problems. That guy's got some fucking problems. That's the least of his problems, man. Between the worm in his head and eating roadkill and all his drugs and sex scandals, and that guy's got a lot of problems. I mean,
he keeps
he's
posting
a Kennedy.
pictures
Not to mention that he's a Kennedy.
He keeps posting pictures on X, like telling people to get out and live real lives. And it's like pictures of him and his family in these like Central America and East Asia doing things like jumping out of a helicopter. And he's like, get out, live real lives. It's like, well, Jesus, man, not everyone can afford a vacation to Central America where they dive off a helicopter,
No, I mean, it's like one of these things to just kind of like rub this elitism into people's faces. I mean, I don't know. I think that's like inherently untrustworthy, but that's just me. No, I think that all of this was like, like not bringing up these things that okay, so there are like, yes, like these clinical trials, and yes, like they were deploying psychedelic drugs and electric current, and these various kinds of like audio and visual disturbances and things like this to patients. But what are they not talking about? Definitely like definitely not talking about like these bigger, broader like deployments into like the actual like culture, and who like, okay, for example, and we talked a lot about the Grateful Dead, and like where what that whole operation was, and where they were getting the drugs from, what creating this counterculture. They can talk about the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic, but where did the actual culture that created the like hippie movement on the Haight-Ashbury come from? Like that was MKUltra. That was like doing it in an open air setting. It wasn't all just being done in government hospitals. They were putting this stuff on the streets, and that like that was the bigger thing. Like creating this whole cultural like system, and like this kind of cultural shift. The whole like boomer generation was like a giant MK test subject, and these music festivals, Woodstock, Monterey Pop, things like that, like this was the real MK. And like we can talk about in these like Senate hearing, congressional inquiry hearings and things like this about, we know about all this, like yes, they were running these like hospitals and clinics and things like this, but what were they really doing in the like the real world? How are they, how are they turning like, real world situations into like open air laboratories? And like, Tavistock and things like this, like you're not hearing that kind of, stuff. So it's like, it's this very specific, like controlled disclosure, limited hangout kind of thing that, again, it shouldn't be shocking to anybody, but like the real thing that was going on was so much bigger. And that's what we're not talking about. And that's like, it's created like really like the whole zeitgeist, the whole paradigm, of like how, our cultural operating system was, what they created, through this like counterculture during those times in the 60s. And like that was the real project as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned.
Well, that's a great point, because like that's, what you're talking about, like the psyops, psychological operations. I've seen a few in my life. I saw the psyop after 9/11, where you had this huge wave of patriotism, and all the country songs that would come out talking about how we need to bomb all these Muslim countries, and like people really got on board with that for a little bit. Then the other psyop I saw was the yeah
Remember that
yeah
song?
Well,
the we'll put a boot
that
in your
came out
ass.
before 9/11 though. But yes.
Yeah, but sure, but I remember that they were bumping that song even more during, like, after 9/11 though.
Well,
Yeah.
and the guys who made that song were like heavy duty Nubian Nation cult members. So
That's
I
right,
mean,
man. That's right. Yeah.
But
and
yeah,
and that's another thing about the MK Ultra is like, the way that they use these like cults and like new religious movements, like those were like mind programming, thing, the People's Temple, Jim Jones, the Process Church of the Final Judgment, Scientology, like all of
Yeah.
these things, and those are, very much connected in like with Charles Manson and all of that. And Tom O'Neill doesn't talk about it at all. Right, like for some reason,
Yeah, fuck Tom
for some reason it took him 20 years to write that damn book,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
didn't once mention the fact that Charles Manson was a Scientology OT8, that the family was like
Yeah.
heavily connected with the Process Church of the Final Judgment, which was itself an offshoot of Scientology, and all of these things. It didn't make it into the book. Ed Sanders wrote, who actually was spending time like at the Spawn Ranch with the family, and wrote like the real book, The Family by Ed Sanders, which everybody should read. I mean, he put all of that out in 1974. I mean, like, this was 50 plus years ago, and Tom O'Neill put his book out in what, 2019. He acts like he never read The Family. It's insane.
Yeah.
So, anyways, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Adam. I apologize for that. I'm
I
sorry.
was
Dude.
super excited.
No, it's a great,
and it was a big disappointment, but
great points. You talk about there was like this huge like militia movement in the 90s, which I was just a kid, but I mean, like you had like things like Waco, Texas, where they, the FBI infiltrated and attacked that cult, Ruby Ridge. And it is interesting that all these like cults were like really rampant right then, and they've just kind of gone away. Like you don't hear about stuff like that anymore. But what I was talking about the psyops was, you had this huge right wing, what I would call a psyop after 9/11. And then the pendulum swung the other way after Obama. And then you had woke, come out, just a few years ago. And it was like this huge, and woke wasn't just like a few people. There was like a machine behind it. There was, cancel culture. There was companies that would go through and like aggregate people's Twitter posts, every tweet you've ever liked, every social media post you've shared. And then they would send that to your employers and be like, look at what this person's done. You need to fire them. And it was really, really inorganic. And it's like you keep, you mentioned the counterculture movement too. It's like we see these huge swings. The counterculture movement was, I mean, who's that guy, Timothy Leary? He was a Harvard professor, and he was like the main proponent of the counterculture movement. There was two other people too, but a really well-educated guy in this great, institution. And now he's telling kids to tune in, turn on, and drop out. He's like, I'm a college professor with a PhD and I have a really successful life, but
Yeah.
I think you kids should drop out of high school and be a bunch of pot smoking hippies.
Well, I mean, Timothy Leary like acknowledged, that he was working for the CIA, and basically said like, yeah, the CIA is responsible for like the entire counterculture. I mean, he was like not shy about talking about this. And yeah, when we talked about, when you talk about Harvard, like Alexander Shulgin, he came out of Harvard, and he's the one who was creating all of these drugs. And like where these things like all come from. I mean, there's like a, this like common nexus point, and really all of this, counterculture, it wasn't just like the drugs. I mean, of course, like the drugs were kind of like the tip of the spear, and kind of like, getting it all started. But like, they're like, it became like, the counterculture became like the culture, right? And it was like in the music, it was in the clothing, it was in the art, everything like that. You didn't have to be like taking acid or smoking weed or anything like that in, like the 60s or 70s, to be like impacted by, these, like this shift in kind of like, the aesthetics, and the kind of like mindset of, like changing, moral values about like sex and family values, and all of these kinds of things. Like, it was more than just the drugs, and like the things that were being like put out in like in the music, and in these like, the way that they produce the music, and the way that they could like layer the sound, and to reproduce it and put it on the records, and you're like, getting it put into your brain in with different patterns and things like this. It really changed. So there were so many ways that they were using this like counterculture to like create the actual like prevailing culture, and to change the culture, and to like program people, in ways that, that like are totally outside of a clinic, a laboratory, that don't really have anything to do with drugs. A lot of it is technology, and that Silicon Valley, like really came out of, the epicenter of this counterculture in Palo Alto and Stanford, which is where the Grateful Dead and Ken Kesey, and all of these people, like that's where Silicon Valley came from. All of the people that like, you know started these companies, they were like acid heads, deadheads, like they were like big counterculture figures, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, and all of these guys, like, that was their thing. They were all like in that scene. And so like, where does all that fit in? Why are we not talking about like, Silicon Valley, and these technologies, in terms of like MK and mind control and mind programming, and like that's where it's really at.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on this too, because it's like an idea I've been kicking around a lot, is like the parallels between the Vietnam era and the anti-war movement. And that, just going back to psyops, like I was talking about, we had that same psyop happen with Iraq too, where you had an unpopular war and an anti-war movement. It's like the public has such a short memory for these things. It's like we see the same patterns pop up again and again. You could almost say that like the liberalism of woke is kind of like echoing the counterculture of the 60s too, where you've got, not, it's like you said, it's the music, it's the shows, it's the movies that everyone's watching. It's not just one thing that's pushing these things. It's like a whole machine that pushes it all at once. And people have talked about CIA control of music for a long time, all these musicians that die young. I mean, if you think about the amount of influence that these stars have, why is it that we constantly look at people like Britney Spears or Michael Jackson, or these celebrities that do weird things and act? Why is this like a constant conversation? It's like these people have real influence, and that's a really powerful thing that people are constantly looking to subvert for their own means, whether it's the government wanting to push their own narrative, or, you know, people behind the government, the deep state, you know, the oligarchs wanting to shift societal narratives, you know, to further their own ends. You know, I think that's a big part of it.
It is, and I think that it's not just like, um, you know, so it's not just like the artists themselves, you know, or like whatever. I mean, if you think about in, you know, like the more modern types of music, you know, in pop music, rap music, electronic music, like these are all, you know, forms of music that like is being generated by computers, right?
Yeah.
The actual like beats, rhythms, patterns, you know, things that you're hearing, and they're just like intricately layered and layered and layered, and they're highly repetitive, right? Like to a degree of like hypnotic
Yeah.
repetition, right?
And
You know, when you hear these like drum patterns, and you know they repeat in a loop, and then you know you hear you know, like these layers of other sounds built on top of them, and these hooks and things like this. They're like those are like mind programming, you know, devices. You know, being you are being like somehow like put under like a state of hypnotism by these like repetitive, you know, rhythmic patterns. And you know, these are things that like can be heavily engineered, it like in actual laboratories. You know, they have done so much research on, you know, how like you know, percussive, you know, like beats and patterns impact like various sectors of the brain. I mean, you know, they'll put like, in fact, like Mickey Hart, the percussionist of the Grateful Dead, like is, you know, somebody who's been really heavily, who, you know, is in the hillbilly camp at the Bohemian Grove with the Bush family, by the way. But you know, he's been, you know, like heavily involved in that research, where they, you know, put like this cap on people with like, you know, these electrical, you know, like sensors, and you know, play like, you know, different rhythm patterns and see which parts of your brain are being activated by them. You know, and so I think that this is, you know, that the music itself and like the patterns that are embedded, you know, in the music itself are actually the programming, and not just like the aesthetics or the words, you know, like that's like something that is like a real surface level thing, but the like computerized, you know, digital, you know, patterns that are programmed into the music itself are like have a specific effect, and it's been designed, and it's being deployed, and it's weaponized.
Mm. Do you think there's maybe like a spiritual element to it? Because, you know, from my just my own beliefs, I do believe in manifestation. I believe that, you know, somehow, and my ideas on this are kind of loose. I'm not, you know, this stuff's pretty abstract, but it's like there is a lot of evidence, you know, that your thought patterns can kind of influence your reality. And I just wonder that about the music. It's like, is it, you know, if you like you're talking about the music kind of hypnotizing you, or getting your thought patterns to go in a certain way. If you do that to a massive group of people, like if you've got millions of people listening to a certain music that's making them think and feel a certain way, you know, what is that doing to reality? You know, again, this is
Bingo.
really abstract, and I
No,
don't, my ideas on this aren't super concrete, but it's just something I toss around a lot with this kind of, you know, thinking. I've been trying to really, I used to listen to a lot of rap and, you know, gangster rap and stuff, and I've been trying to listen to more like, you know, like reggae or like Bob Marley lately, just to be more put myself in a better mood, because I have noticed that it does put me in a better mood to listen to more organic stuff. You mentioned the layering too. Like, you know, it used to be you'd go into a recording studio with a bunch of instruments and just vocals, and you would record. And now, like you said, it's all these computerized electronic beats, and it's like the singer doesn't even matter anymore. They can just digitally alter. Anyone could
well,
be a star,
and
you know,
now
just
you
like
have
we saw with Britney
Suno.
Spears. I mean, like they just,
You now you have like this Suno, and you know what that program is? Like you can just type in, I want a song about these things in this musical style, and have you used this or seen it? Like it in 5 minutes, it pumps out like a whole song that like could be like a real song, that like,
Mhm.
and you can make it sound like anything. It's insane, and that's just something that you can like use like a cell phone app, and it's crazy. Like you can really make like a song about anything that it, it's something that like these things can get played on the radio, or not that like people listen to the radio, but I mean, probably like a lot of what's on Spotify or on YouTube, like increasingly is stuff that people like are making on Suno and just uploading and being like, yeah,
Dude,
I wrote this song.
dude, I think I've been seeing articles over the past few months like crazy. The uh, the number one artist and the number like a good majority of the top 5 or top 10 artists are AI artists now.
And that's
I
like
can believe it.
They're not real.
and that's like people being like, yeah, that's cool with me. I know this is AI, and I want and I'll
Yeah,
still like support and but then then there's also like the aspect
not
of it where
good.
people could fool you and not knowing that it's AI. But yeah, like what you're saying, Adam, this like spiritual kind of like collective consciousness kind of thing. Like how do you impact like on a global scale, like people's, outlook and like their, kind of persona, I mean, like how much, since, like the 50s or 60s, with like this, kind of mass media in, radio and television and now computers and stuff like that. Like how much of like our identities are formed by the music that we listen to? Like when you're growing up and you're like in middle school and high school, what is like your social group dictated by? It's like your musical preference, right? You've got like the punk rockers, and you've got like the like the rap heads, and this and that. Like you identify now like socially, and this isn't new, but like by like the music that you're listening to. And so it's like the people that listen to this music dress this way, the people that listen to this music act this way, and like what is like those are kind of like things that are built around it culturally. But like what is in the music itself that is like influencing people to do things, think things, say things? And especially now, like with the way that we're getting fed it, and we're listening to it on these like Bluetooth things that are like sending like an actual frequency from the device, into our heads, right? With these, like digital, patterns and things like this. Like, I don't know. That's the real MK Ultra to me, you know?
Mm.
Like how these things are like actually getting inside of our heads. How
Yeah.
how this stuff is being reproduced like in our eardrums, the things that we're actually seeing visually, like how they're actually physically entering our body and things like that. Like they're coming off of these digital interfaces. um there's something to it. It's
Yeah.
changing, it's changing us.
I really believe that. What brought it up in my head too is in Divulgence podcast number 134, we had a conversation towards the end where Habsburg told a story about doing DMT in the Amazon, and you talked about how the tribal, the shamans there would use music to guide the journey. And it's almost like the same things happening when you see these artists come out. Like, you see like Sexy Red come out, talk about, telling women to like be a whore and do all this stuff. It's like, what's that doing, apart from like the social programming? Like, what's it doing having people listening to this, like just kind of garbage trash music? I would encourage anyone that's listening or watching, just go and look up the Beatles Twist and Shout, and how that song was like recorded. It's so much different than what is produced in modern times. Or look up like traditional music too, of just like instruments and singing from like indigenous cultures. I mean, that's what people were listening to for like thousands of years, right up until the modern period. It makes you can feel it. It makes you feel something different. I mean, music has a huge effect on your emotion, and in my opinion, your emotions shape your reality. There's a lot of power in belief and emotion and that kind of stuff.
Well,
So
yeah, no, I mean, and these things like, sound waves like actually have a physical biophysical impact on us, right? And there are different kinds, but they all are like mostly vibrations, right? You pluck a guitar string, that's a vibration. Hit a piano key and it vibrates a wire. You hit a drum skin, that's a vibration. So we're feeling these like actual like ripples of vibrational energy from the like that's what it is. When you sing, it's a vibration. You're like creating a vibratory effect. Same thing when you speak, inside of your body. So like all of these things have this like actual like structure and in a physical sense, right? So they do have like an impact. You're putting it out and you're receiving it, right? When you sing, you're putting it out, but like when you're listening, you're receiving it. You can feel it, right? You can physically feel like like a deep bass line, like it like rattles your freaking rib cage, right? So like those things have like an actual impact. And I think that like the real MK work was like they had people like in like the real in real laboratories like studying, hey, what happens when we play this note at this frequency at this volume, you know what I mean? Like,
mm,
and then how do we get that on a record that people are going to hear? How do we get people to a concert and and get people like in a mass setting to experience that all at once and have this like collective experience with that input, right? Everybody is like sure, they're having their own separate experience, but you're having like a collective experience. You're kind of getting this like embedded thing, and especially when you add in the drugs, right? So that's like that is the real programming. And it can be used for good. And it's interesting that you bring up the Beatles. And actually Twist and Shout is actually an Isley Brothers song. It's actually not a Beatles song. But the Beatles like changed the culture like more than, I mean, it in like ways that we can't fathom, right? It wasn't just like the music, it was like the message, it was the clothes, it was like their promotion of drug. I mean, it was when the Beatles turned on to like acid and started making you know like drug influenced music, right? When they put out like Revolver, and then like Sergeant Pepper's and things like that. Like that's when the culture really changed. I mean, that's when it like happened on a mass scale. And the Beatles are like, you know, I mean, like, can you prove it? Can you not prove it? I mean, who knows? But like, there's some pretty strong suggestion that this was like influence, if not completely created by the Tavistock Institute, for this exact purpose to change the culture. So, um, really interesting stuff. And like, is the music good? Like, damn right. Like, it wouldn't have worked if the music wasn't good.
mm,
If they sucked, nobody would have
yeah.
like gotten into it. They had to figure out how to make the most compelling stuff, to get everybody in the world like, oh yeah, we're into this. And with the Beatles, it wasn't just like the drug culture, then it was the like the Eastern religious stuff, and putting that in the new age, that like the like Hindu, like they were into cults. They were following the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who like started transcendental meditation, which is actually a really, TM is a really serious cult for like really elite people. And you're talking about like now, I don't know how much you guys know about TM, but I mean, Transcendental meditation, it's not just a technique, it's like an actual, religious organization. They're based in Fairfield, Iowa. They own the entire town. And it's like people like Oprah and Tom Hanks, and David Lynch was like, the biggest proponent of TM. And all of these, like really, serious people. The Beatles were like the first people to introduce him to the Western world. So it's really interesting, I mean, how many levels it was working on, where, it's, religion, drugs, like aesthetics, clothing, the hair, people started wearing their hair like this because
Yeah,
of the Beatles, like it
that's
didn't
right.
happen. It didn't happen before that on a mass scale.
Beards
You
and
may,
stuff.
you maybe had like, the beatniks and, things like that, but those were really like, niche, like fringe, elements. That was not like in the mainstream of culture. I mean, it happened because like the Beatles came out on Ed Sullivan and they were wearing their hair shaggy, is why, like people started doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting how these cultural shifts happen. Have you guys are you guys familiar with a woman called Michelle LeMay? She's like a high priestess
Lamy,
of
Michelle
Hollywood.
Lamy. Yeah.
So she is really good friends with ASAP Rocky. Here, I'll just share my screen here for a
She's
second.
gnarly, dude. She's really
Let's see
gnarly.
here. And
And
just so
what's her
the
husband's
audience
name
can see the
is Rick Owens. Like they're really like deeply connected in the fashion world.
yeah. Yeah, so this is her, and she's like involved with a lot of
Uh,
people that make music. And she's clearly like
what's her deal?
basically she's a
Okay.
satanic priestess essentially,
Oh
but
yeah.
she's involved in the music industry
That
heavily, and
makes
she
sense.
influences
Music and fashion, big time
yeah.
in both.
Fashion. I mean, just look at this. I mean, that's clearly a demon sitting next to her, right?
Yeah.
So it's like these are the kind of people that are
And her and Marina Abramovich are like totally
Marina, yeah,
connected, both of them.
the
Yeah,
spirit cooking
yeah.
lady. She was in the the whole Pizzagate thing. If you go down that rabbit hole, she was the
Well,
one that was doing the spirit cookings
and she's the mentor to like Lady Gaga and
Mhm.
Jay
Yep.
Z, and like I mean, both of them are like these spiritual, like witch, demon channeler, high priestess, they're both of extreme influence and in those industries. And with sorry, I lost my train of thought here a little bit, but yeah, you bring up a really good point. I mean, like this is who's like, grooming, the artists is, I was gonna say Marina Abramovich, is also really connected, since we were talking about Outcast before, with Andre 3000, who was, a
Oh, right.
new
Yeah.
Wabi cult member.
Right.
He's totally connected with
Good
Marina
point, dude.
Abramovich. So,
Good point. Crazy. Wow, man. That's wild. Um, Adam, do you want to jump into the Iran war for a few minutes? I know you
Yeah,
wanted to
I
talk
think
about
yeah, we got off on a tangent here, but I think it's really good.
Those
Really
are
good
fun though,
side.
man. Yeah, those are good.
Yeah, it is.
It's not so much a tangent when you think about like the subject was MK Ultra, and that like
Yeah,
this is
all connect.
like
Oh
this
yeah,
is the
good point.
MK Ultra. I
Yeah,
think
good
that
We're
point.
was the whole
talking
point.
about what they should have been talking about.
That
So
Yeah.
yeah,
that's
we're
exactly.
giving it to the people. So
Exactly.
no, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. I would love to do a another in-depth episode on that, and that would be again that would be another great topic to bring Dana Duda in on. I know we've talked about bringing her back, so but yeah, no, man, I appreciate that, Habsburg. We love your insight, man. We're to be honest with you, that's like a big reason why I was hoping that we could make sure to have you here when we were talking about that, because I know that's it's one of your jams, man. You know the shit, so you know the names, you know where the bodies were buried. So
before we move on, can I just ask y'all one thing about this that
of course.
that I'm like this is really on my radar in terms of like the programming, and I have not quite figured it out yet, but there's something going on. So y'all have seen this whole stuff with like the fruit, the like the pineapples and the Kool-Aid, right? The dabiga, the
what? No.
oh, come on,
Meme?
y'all.
Is this a meme or something?
Yes, this is like the most like viral trend like in the last month.
Sorry. When people put pineapple in with Kool-Aid and eat it, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So they you guys have seen this, right? Where
where you sprinkle Kool-Aid on a pineapple?
No. Okay, so it's like, all right, in the like urban, culture zeitgeist, whatever, like, it's like in the black community mostly.
Okay, I was gonna say it's a black thing, right? Yeah.
They're taking these like jars of pineapples and like in the juice or whatever, and no, it's the spears. It's the pineapple spears. Type in DABIHGAH, dabiga, and you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm surprised you guys haven't seen this stuff. Yes. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. All right, this is it. So it's these jars of pineapple spears. Yes, the kid with the blue shirt, the kid with the blue shirt and the hat. That one, that guy. Okay, this went like insanely viral in the last couple of weeks. And so what he has is it's a jar of pineapple spears that they put a packet of Kool-Aid into and like more sugar. And these things have like, one jar, it's, has like more sugar than like a box of Krispy Kreme donuts or something like that.
Oh,
all right. But like these videos, I'm surprised you guys haven't seen this. Like these videos are going so insanely viral, and all these people are like selling these jars of pineapple on, the original video, and this kid is like completely autistic, right? He's this little like wigger kid, he's probably like 12, 13 years old, and he's like that bit gat, like that's the meme. That bitch gas. That big gas. Okay. And I'm telling you, this is like the most viral thing ever, like right now. And these things are like, it's really disgusting. But so it's like they're promoting this like total degeneracy, with like this food thing. But and people are like selling these jars of like Kool-Aid pineapple spears on like Facebook Marketplace.
We did like 11 million views.
11 million views. See? Like this, but anyways, so there's this thing about the fruit and like the sugar and the Kool-Aid, like this really gross, like diabetes, inducing stuff. But there's also this like, like the way that they're talking, and like promoting this like absolute like, I don't know if you get censored for saying retarded, but like, this like retarded speak by like literal.
Whoa, you can't say that.
by like literal like autistic people. Like these people are, like you watch this guy in interviews and like he's like autistic, he's like retarded. So they're like getting people. I don't know, man. There is something going on with this, and so in like these algorithms, I'm seeing all this weird like fruit related stuff. I don't know, dude. I brought it up because I figured that you guys would have seen this, but this is like the biggest phenomenon, and there's some really weird MK thing going on, and I don't know if it's like nanobots in the pineapples. I don't know, it's definitely like the retarded wigger talk,
So they're making they're turning people into like retarded wiggers. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
And
yes, yes. And they're feeding them this trash that is so like devastatingly unhealthy and like making it look all cool. Yeah, it's brain rot. I mean, it's brain rot and like the physical body rot from like eating this stuff. It's so crazy. So this is like this new like trend of eating these insane things, but fruit is a part of it. And I don't know like what that means. You know, obviously this stuff is like GMO and like I don't know what they're putting into it and like why they're getting people to like eat this stuff. But anyways, I brought it up. You know, sorry, you guys will have to do some research. Now that we've talked about it, this stuff is gonna pop up on your algorithms like crazy, I'm
Yeah.
sure. But it's just been like crazy in the last couple of weeks. I've just like I've been inundated. It's all I see, you know.
I'm
So,
gonna. All I knew is that like they were mixing pineapple with Kool-Aid, and from what I understood, it seemed to be a black thing, and so okay, I'll keep my eyes and ears open, and we'll definitely have to
I'm
discuss
telling you,
it.
dude, it's a
Discuss it
big
again. Don't
big
worry.
social engineering operation. I haven't
That's
figured it
crazy.
out. I haven't figured it
Right?
out yet. I was hoping that you guys would have some insight into this because I've been really trying to wrap my mind around it. But like I've been seeing these like I will get promoted these like accounts with like no followers, right? And like, you know, doing like real weird ghetto shit and like look at their accounts and it has like a couple hundred followers and you know like their main post won't have any likes or any comments, but when it's them like doing something with fruit and not just like pineapple Kool-Aid stuff but like you know just like eating fruit or like doing something with fruit, they have thousands of likes and comments on an account with like 100 followers. It makes no sense. There's something going on. So you guys get back to me on that. You know, I've got a lot of questions.
All
It's a
right.
big pineapple, man. You know, the CIA's got a long history
They
of
do.
fruit company interests.
United Fruit. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, no, I did a whole, I made a documentary about, you know, the wars and stuff. Me and Jordan had
Yeah.
a conversation about it. I would say in this particular sense, it's probably just like just brain rot. I mean, things go viral and then people jump on the bandwagon and then it's just like you said where it's like you'll post one video on it and you know all of a sudden that video will take off. I experienced that a lot with shorts where it's like I'll put in a lot of research or something into a short and it won't do anything, and then you post some stupid meme crap and then it just explodes. We see a lot of this kind of stuff, you know, the same thing you talk about these autistic people, same thing with clavicle. Jordan's buddy, clavicular, the looks maxing guy. I mean, that guy, he's severely autistic.
Yeah.
He rearranged his face with a hammer.
He looks
And
worse now. He had his surgeries done. Now he looks worse, and like
yeah.
he's like freaking out, and like he's going out hard, man. Yeah.
But that's
You
but
think
that's the point.
about that, like,
Why do those things go viral? Like you know, these algorithms, it's not just like random and happenstance. Like, you know, like there are reasons why some things, you know, go viral in these algorithms and then it causes these chain reactions.
yeah. Could be. I mean, I think the internet and especially like shorts platforms, like to make a good short, like first of all, if you look at it, it's like to get people because people are swiping away every nanosecond, they're swiping. So it's like the first thing is a sound effect and then a transition right in the first, like right in the
Yeah.
beginning. And then
Yeah.
if the creator, like right now, like if I make a short, if I make just a distinct short, I'll wear a wife beater like this because it shows my tattoos. Because someone will look and they'll be like, the first thing they'll get is the sound effect, then they'll get the transition, then they'll see my face, then they'll
Yeah.
look at my tattoos. If you have something else in your background, so it's like all
And then
these
they're
things
hooked.
are like attention grabbing things. So it's like shorts don't really promote intelligent videos. They promote retard maxing, not to use clavicular's term, but it's like the most trash, and especially this kind of stuff's like for kids, right? So it's like the stuff for like Gen Alpha is just so weird and out there. It's like to keep people's attention, you just have to have really weird and outlandish things, like some wigger saying "da big ah," while they're drinking pineapple.
Well,
It's just sort of like the degeneracy that shorts algorithms promote. I mean, that's just my opinion. It could be
I
big
mean,
pineapple, but
well, no, but I mean, I think my point about it is that, like, how does the algorithm like pick up a video to start showing? It's not like somebody's just like looking at any given video like at random. Like, yeah, we all like have accounts on whatever platform that we're using that we follow, but what about the things that you don't follow that just like show up in your feed? Like, it's being selected based on, like, you're like, oh, somebody's looking at the background and my tattoos and this and that. Or is it that the algorithm sees, oh, he's got these things in the background, he's got these tattoos, this algorithm is written to push something with those features onto that person's feed? Like, that's actually how it works. Like, it doesn't just like show up on its own. If you're not like, if I'm not like following da big guy, you know what I mean? Like, why did I see it in the first place? You know
Well,
what I'm
you are
saying? Well, yeah, I mean,
though.
no, but you know what I'm
you're
saying?
talking about it an awful lot for someone that doesn't follow.
You love it, man.
Well, no, but this is what I'm saying. Like, this has like sparked this whole thing of like, okay, why am I seeing this? Why are these things getting pushed? Like, what is going on here? There are like things that are being like put in front of us. I mean, we all know that that's how the algorithms work. I mean, the algorithm is the influencer, right? It makes somebody an influencer, based on like how does it get chosen? Like, who's writing the code for the algorithm to make those selections to put it in our face? I think that this is like a huge topic, and I'm really glad. I actually was like wanting to talk with you guys about this, because like I think that this is really serious stuff. Is like, what are these algorithms? Who's using them, and like how, and like what is it doing to us? Like, the people that are writing the algorithms are like, Alphabet, the Alphabet's run by the CIA, Meta is DARPA, like CIA, whatever, right? Like, I mean, whoever's, running the social media platforms, like, those are the intelligence agencies are behind them, so that's where the algorithms are coming from.
Yeah, I would I'll double down on, I think it's just like short form video content degeneracy. And like, we haven't really had short form videos for very long. I mean, when did they come around? Like 2019? It's like they I really feel it's kind of like a
Well, what
race
about,
to
I
the
don't know
bottom
about,
in
what
terms
about
of,
Vine? There's a Vine's
yeah,
been around for a
Vines on YouTube,
while.
but it wasn't like scrolling. You still had to like
Oh, you're
pick and
right. Yeah,
choose, like
you're right.
this scrolling, and like what stops your attention, and like the more outlandish the video, the more you're gonna watch. And it is, it could partially be like Habsburg. To your point, I will say that they definitely know the words you're saying and the content of your video, because like, especially on TikTok, like I have like a maybe 70% success rate on getting my videos up on TikTok, because they censor so much. Or even if you do get your video up, even if you have hundreds or thousands of followers, it might do very poorly because of what you're talking about. I mean, there definitely is content moderation in there, and they don't actually tell you how these algorithms work, because the whole goal of the algorithm is to beat AI content. It's to beat people taking content and repurposing it, right? Like, you could just screen record a video and then put like a laughing emoji on it, or you do something to distort the screen to fool the content recognition. So like, they don't tell you how the algorithms work, because they don't want people to be able to circumvent them, to just like record content and re-upload it. Because if something goes viral once, it'll go viral again.
What do
You
you mean by they don't want? Because, like, I mean, how do we know who they is and what they do or don't want?
like when they don't want us to know how the algorithms, like the
No, no, no.
like,
When you're saying like they don't want this kind of content, or they want this kind of content, like, who do you
mm,
think they is?
The
the people
Jews.
that yeah, the Jews, the
course.
people that run the platforms, they don't want you to fully know how the algorithms work,
Well,
because I've tried to
who
find out.
who runs the platforms?
The Jews.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Mark Zuckerberg and you know, Sundar Pichai, and you know,
I mean,
I mean,
does Mark Zuckerberg really
Epstein's funny.
run? Does Mark Zuckerberg really run Instagram? I mean, do you think that it's like Mark Zuckerberg's like calling in and being like, "All right, that big gat this week. All right, it's the pineapple kid." You know, like, is it Mark
I
Zuckerberg?
I
Like,
think Mark
really?
Zuckerberg sits there at his computer and every short form video comes across his screen and he approves or disapproves.
But I mean, so like, here's the thing though, is like, you know, legitimately, like algorithms, you know, like come from like code that humans, you know, like there is a source of like
Mhm.
where this algorithm is generated from. So, you know, somebody's telling them like, okay, we're creating this algorithm that's going to like pick, you know, whatever these things are and put it onto like your feed to get you to look at it, you know, and there are going to be like certain criteria of like things, and it can change. And I'm sure that now we're in a, you know, age where like the algorithms can like change themselves, and I don't really know how all that works with the AI and stuff, but that like there is like, yes, CIA pineapple app, exactly. You know, but right, you know, it's like the algorithms are like coming from, you know, some kind of like human source at the very like, you know, beginning, at the, you know, like at the start, right?
There
So
definitely
somebody's
is
like, we want them to do this, you know.
there definitely is a huge social engineering possibility from algorithms. And like if you just look at like you know, influencing culture, it's like the ultimate psyop, like what videos would be pushed out and why. And you know, you talk about elections too, it's like these companies, these tech companies can have huge sway in elections if they decide to suppress certain news stories or rise certain, or you know, individual creators. I mean, there is a huge potential for that. What is the extent of it? I mean, you know, Mark Zuckerberg's not going to come out and say, you know, hey, this is what we're doing, we're trying to move the Overton window one way or the other. I mean, they're not going to tell you that. I think it's you know, I don't know. I mean, it's really just pure conjecture on what we would say here, but I think some of it is just short form content degeneracy, but there definitely is a huge potential for some social engineering. And I don't, like, we are making jokes about it, but like there is a potential for that. And I mean, to say that it hasn't happened, I would say would be wrong. Like that these companies have never tried to do something like that, have never tried to dumb down Americans by pushing out dad baga content or whatever. Like, no, I think that could definitely be possible.
Well,
Every single retarded short form video that comes up, is that a psyop? Maybe not, but maybe on a broader scale. Like, I mean, TikTok. It was proven that TikTok would, you know, when it was Chinese owned, would push educational content for Chinese children and would push like just mindless brain rot content for American kids. You know, why were they doing that? Because they want Chinese kids to, you know, be more educational focused, and they want American kids to eat Tide Pods, you know?
well, and right, and what I'm saying too is, you know, I think that it's not all just random, and it's not just like for mind rot for the sake of mind rot. Like, I think that there are, you know, I think that this is the, you know, again, you know, this is the MKUltra aspect. And you know, I think it all goes back to this, you know, programming consciousness. And you know, as much as we were talking about like music and, you know, messaging and you know, like you know, hypnotic, you know, thing, you know, elements of music, that there's like the same elements of these videos, and that there are things in them that we're not understanding what we're actually looking at. And we also don't know like how much of it is AI and how much of it's not. Like, we assume that big guy, that kid is a real kid. What if he's not? You know, like, what if he's like an AI that was like cooked up in Langley, you know, and they're like, oh, you know, like da big guy, you know, kid, like we're gonna deploy this, you know, on these kids, you know, like, you know, no idea, you know, what's real and what's not anymore, you know, like, so I think that, I think it's, you know, to me, I don't see it as being all random, you know. I don't see how I don't see how it can be like, you know, just completely random. I think that it's, you know, I think that there are like things that we're being, you know, deliberately exposed to that are like changing our minds, changing, you know, like the culture.
Hmm. I I mean, without a doubt, there's, you know, the I would say without a doubt, yes, that things are pushed to change the culture and collective consciousness. And short form videos, I don't think I've really been trying to limit my own intake of them because I don't think that they're healthy. They can artificially produce ADHD. You know, you can, if you don't have ADHD, they will give them to you, you know, by just what it does to your brain. It's constantly like it's a dopamine spike every time you scroll, every time you get a new video. You know, so yeah, I don't think short form video content is a collective good at all.
I've also noticed another trend I've noticed with these short form videos is they will, you're talking about like how they're pulling people in right at the beginning. Sometimes they won't do the sound and all that. Sometimes they'll just throw you the peak moment, the peak second of the video right away. And then goes back, and then you're watching up until that point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another tactic where it's like, oh, gee, and then you realize, like, oh, well, I mean, I have already seen the good part. Like, why did I
Yeah.
even sit through that whole video? It's interesting.
It is. And I mean, even if you do something just as simple as like zooming in on your face, like if you put a slight zoom to it, you don't realize the zoom could be so slight, but it's like because you're slowly getting bigger, the person who's watching, your brain is adjusting to the changing image, even if you don't realize it's zooming. So it's like it's all about doing things that like, ooh, what's this? Ooh, what's this? Ooh, like sometimes people on the short form videos, they'll be like eating something. That's another tactic. Not only
Yes.
does the creator look very distinctive, but now they're eating something. So it's like your brain is now like it's about giving the viewer more things to register because every time you throw something new up or you do something new or whatever, CIA pineapple. Does that guy keep saying that or do you just keep
No,
throwing up the
that's
same
Jordan
that's
keeps putting that up.
I
Dude,
thought this
it's
person was
relevant.
just spamming CIA
No,
pineapple.
No, yeah, Jordan is spamming.
relevant. All right, guys, it's relevant. Just keeping it.
I
Yeah.
can't. I swear to God, I can't believe y'all hadn't seen that shit. Like it's crazy. Like
I didn't know it was
dude.
this deep.
I'm
I didn't know it was
40.
that deep.
Dude, I'm 45, and everybody I know has seen this dumb shit.
That's
I
crazy,
haven't
man.
seen it once. And I am online a lot.
I'm shocked. Like honestly, I am shocked. I thought I was gonna bring this up, and everybody's gonna be like, "Oh yeah, the pineapple shit." Like,
Yes.
oh yeah.
No, man. Sorry. Yeah. I didn't know it was that
But
deep.
it's yeah. Dude, there's something going on. We're gonna like reconvene on that topic. We can move on. I didn't mean to like derail everything. I just thought that like,
No,
man,
dude, that was good shit.
I was like, oh, I'm gonna bring this up, and everybody's gonna know exactly what I'm talking about, and we're gonna have
Sorry
this
to
like
disappoint, man. Sorry.
no, but like now,
Maybe it's a regional psyop. Maybe it's like just in the
Yeah,
Pacific
maybe
Northwest
it's
or
not in our
something.
area.
yeah,
It's not a
except that
psyop.
like none of these people are like in the Pacific Northwest. They're all like in
Oh,
like urban areas with not the demographic that we
oh,
have
right.
here.
Yeah,
Oh, you mean areas that have lots of Church's fried chickens? Yeah.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're
Church's
saying.
fried chicken are not in good locations. If you're around at Church's, you're not in a good part of the town. I'll just
And that said, if you like absolutely had to eat a fast food fried chicken, you gotta choose churches, right? Like
they
Is it
are
good?
good. Yeah.
it's. I mean, I don't eat that kind of stuff, but like if I were gonna have to, if I had a gun in my head, I'd choose churches.
You
Just
don't
saying.
eat that. You don't eat that black fare. Is that what's going on here?
I mean, I'll eat fried chicken all day. I like home cooked.
Nice. Yeah. Like there's like, I don't know, in my city we got KFC, and then I don't know, Mother Brown's or something like that. But KFC is disgusting. Oh, so gross.
Tim Hortons. You got a Tim Hortons in your
We got a Timmy Hose. Oh yeah, we got a Timmy Hose.
Well, like the big competition is like churches or Popeyes, right? Churches or Popeyes.
We don't. We have Popeyes in Canada, I think, but not in Thunder Bay.
They're like head to head is churches and Popeyes. In those communities.
Oh, okay.
that Adam referenced.
Gotcha.
I'd go churches over Popeyes any day.
Popeye's a little spicy. They got a little spice to their Louisiana chicken.
I'll be honest with you. Years ago, I the last time I had it. See, this guy knows churches. Big guy. That big guy. I got really sick the last time I ate Popeyes years ago, dude. I won't lie.
Dirty old Shinobi wants us to talk about Iran.
Moving on.
Okay. So Iran, they're having I noticed that they're having the big funeral procession for Khomeini, and it's like supposed to be in defiance of the U.S., but I mean, I don't know. It's like they're just having a funeral for the guy. But yeah. So Adam, war over? Who won? What are your thoughts? I mean, this seems to just be one big fucking disaster.
It's insane. Insane. It was a huge gamble, and the U.S. lost. I mean, in terms of like chess moves, we've put ourselves in a really bad position. So the stated goal was regime change. We obviously didn't get that. Basically, what they tried to do was the first thing that the U.S. did was crash the Iranian rial through currency traders. So the price of the Iranian rial next to other currencies plummeted. They tried to crash their economy, start protests. There were some diplomats, I believe a Dutch diplomat was found with like some satellite phones, and the U.S. tried to orchestrate some protests, and then they thought that would lead to an uprising after the U.S. degraded the Iranian military, which we did. We like wiped out their air force, which was mostly old planes from the Shah days in the 70s. So the conditions were ripe for a revolution, but the people just didn't want it. And I believe what happened, my personal opinion, obviously I'm not an intelligence person, but I believe the Israelis probably told Trump, probably gave him some bogus intelligence that said, if you do these things, Iran will rise up and overthrow the Ayatollahs. That didn't happen. And when that didn't, now we're forced into a state of either you launch a ground invasion, which would probably be extremely costly because, of drone warfare. We saw the Yemeni Houthi rebels were able to successfully harass U.S. aircraft carriers to not get close to Yemen. U.S. warships during this war didn't cross the Strait of Hormuz because for a relatively inexpensive, like $100 drone, you can successfully harass these battleships and aircraft carriers. There's a lot of people now that are saying the aircraft carrier is obsolete because you can't feasibly get close to anywhere with any kind of military. So now Trump had to kind of do some backtracking, and we're doing $300 in reparations that's going to be paid by Gulf states. States that Iran bombed are going to reimburse them. And we are unfreezing assets that have been frozen since the 1979 revolution, which these assets, Jimmy Carter froze these. So we're digging back in our purse to give the Iranians more things. They effectively have control over the Strait of Hormuz now. International law doesn't allow for a full-blown toll, but they're saying they're going to charge a fee for safe navigation of ships. I mean, just some clever wording. So Iran's going to effectively control the strait. And collect a toll. So, and what's crazy too is the spot that the U.S. has put ourselves in. We are at our strategic oil reserves are at the lowest since 1983. because Trump started dipping into the strategic petroleum reserves so that the U.S. wouldn't be buying all of its oil on the open market, which would cause further price escalation. A side note on oil prices is China pulled themselves out of the global oil market, and they have been buying just using their strategic reserves. Once China starts coming back and replacing what they have been using, that's going to further escalate prices. I also, to further illustrate just what an absolute disaster this was, I want to play a short clip from the Tucker Carlson show where this guy, he's a Middle East analyst. He details how long it's going to take for the U.S. to replace like the Patriot missiles and the PRISM missile systems that we expended during this conflict here. So let's this is real. I was shocked when I heard this
in recent weeks. So missile interceptors, about 50% of the inventory of Patriot ballistic missile interceptors, and 50, likely closer to 80% of terminal high altitude area defense interceptors were expended in the course of the war. Over 1,000, that's about a third of our entire stockpile of Tomahawk cruise missiles has been expended. Large quantities of the JASSM missiles, as well as pretty much the entire pre-war inventory of new precision strike missiles, the PRISMs that were used. Also, interestingly enough, because we were told there was never any threat to our Navy, this is why, of course, they never really dared to go through the Strait of Hormuz. The Navy reports that they expended large quantities of their SM-3 and SM-6 naval interceptors, which indicates to me, if I may conjecture here, that there must have been one hell of a fight over the security of our ships when the war was in its kinetic phase. So the White House was lying when they said that the ships were totally safe. Our ships are very much at risk, obviously, from these numbers. Furthermore, there are now significant gaps in the supply chain for those naval defenders. One last bit of data I'd like to deliver here. I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. The chart here I have is for the PRISM. We blew through our pre-war stock, which was already low. They're saying the best estimate will be it will be replenished by late this year. The JASSM air-to-surface missiles will probably be replaced middle of next year. Those SM-3, SM-6 Navy defense missiles will take until about mid-2028. Those Patriot interceptors, not until closer to 2030. The THAAD interceptors, and the THAADs are the real important ones. That's not going to come until probably 2030, and the Tomahawks will not be replaced for another 5 years. So we better hope that the Chinese or some other area of interest is no longer requiring our assistance, because we have depleted ourselves, Tucker. And I will just add and conclude my little statement here with, unfortunately, it is my assessment that this memorandum of understanding that might or may not lead to a longer deal. I'm very skeptical of that. I think we'll get a 60-day reprieve, and then it'll be like the tariffs. It'll be every 45 days we're getting an extension. But I would just add that what we have agreed to, the Trump administration, and they didn't have a choice because the president.
All right, I think that's enough of that. But I really, that struck me because from the limited engagement, just a few months, just 3 months, he's talking about the THAAD interceptors aren't going to be replaced until 2030. And just for people to know some history, like the reason largely that the U.S. was so successful in World War II is because we could out manufacture Germany. We had such a huge manufacturing base. We could quickly churn out B-52s and Sherman tanks and all. It's like now we've got ourselves in a spot. I mean, first of all, I guess there's in the military, I don't know if maybe they never thought of this or anything, but it's like you're in a situation where these highly technological weapons are going to take forever to replace. So it's like if we were ever in a major conflict, what would that look like after a few months? But it's like now not only do we have our petroleum reserves at the lowest point since 1983, but we have depleted a lot of our missile interceptors and long range missiles. So the whole thing, we didn't get our original stated goals, and now we're in a very weak spot geopolitically. and we've shown weakness. We lost the war, and Iran is now emerging as a major power in the region. They successfully defied the United States. They control the Strait of Hormuz, and they're I believe going to start having more so than they already did. They're going to have more influence regionally. So the whole Iran war was just a complete debacle, start to finish, and we're going to be, you know, dealing with this for a while, I think.
Yeah, and not to mention, like, the U.S. has just given weapons away to Israel, Ukraine. Obviously that really hurt their supplies as well. So between that and everything they've been throwing at Iran, yeah, that's wild. 4 to 5 years to bring all these stocks back up, and that's if everything stops today, as of today, or as of that interview, right? So yeah, that's it's pretty scary when you think about it, and not to mention just the changing of powers and changing of attitudes of these countries.
Yeah.
So
And it's important to keep in mind that he's talking about publicly available data. It was what
okay,
what supply chain issues or manufacturing issues has the US government not been forthcoming about, for security reasons or for, national
exactly.
security reasons. So it's like, I mean, we're kind of in a bad spot. We've in terms of a chessboard, we've made some pretty not great moves. If you look at this as a chessboard.
Well, hear me out. So I think that one of the things that, I mean, I agree in terms of like the, overall consequences. We're talking about, a shift in, like power dynamics, globally, a shift in like attitudes, of, populations, like popularity of, various regimes, the kind of like the shift in public sentiment. But certainly the like the energy supply, for the United States, but globally, this is a deep impact. Hear me out. What if, really this was the intended outcome all along? What if, this was like the script? What if this is a Wag the Dog? Have you guys seen that movie?
Great movie.
If you haven't, you got to see it.
It's actually a really good movie. Yeah.
Not only is it a really good movie, like, we gotta think that this is like legitimately the kind of thing that can be accomplished so much more easily now than when that movie was made in 30 years ago, in 1997. We have AI now, that like to the degree that like we don't really know what, none of us have been over to the area. You can't go over there. You like, we're just, relying on what we're seeing on social media and in mainstream news or whatever. Like, there is no way to like qualify what has or hasn't happened. The outcome is going to be the same, whether there was a real war or not, right? That like the supply, the energy supply, has shifted, that if they've manufactured that, that was the intended outcome anyways. Like, was that not, is that not part of this? Like, you talk about 2030, like, it's interesting that they brought that date up in, in terms of these analytics about, the armaments, because 2030 is, like an important date for all of these sustainable development goals, and, like the UN targets of, energy, and like, cutting off, like, shifting from petroleum based, energies to, these renewables, and, things like this that can be controlled in other ways, shifting, to like these, EV systems, like limiting, private car ownerships, things like this. Like, is this not like potentially really like serve that agenda, overall, that like, if we manufacture some kind of conflict and, change the, the access points of like where oil comes in and out of, and put it in like the under the auspices of an adversary, like what does that, like doesn't that really just like accelerate this whole agenda of this austerity and scarcity of oil, like de facto making these sustainable development goals accelerate in terms of adoption. So like that's kind of what I think about it is like what do these things actually serve, like if the intended outcome like above just like, oh, it's America, Israel, Iran, like what if there is really like supranational forces consolidated at the top that are like, look, we want to like shake up the chessboard, and we want to like reconfigure things. This is like an easy way to do it, and to make it like look like something's happening when something else is happening, you get the same outcome. And people are pissed off. Like this has really changed like the like the political social fabric of certainly of the United States. People like are definitely like seeing things really differently than they were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, right? Like there's definitely like a reaction, and it's changing like public sentiment about trust in the government, and trust in institutions and things like this. Like this is to me like that's what whether like things have really like happened the way that they've been reported or not, like the outcome is the same, and we're like going to suffer the consequences one way or the other. So I just don't think that there's any way to like reasonably like validate any of the claims about what's been going on over there.
Sure.
You know, when we saw like we've all seen the footage now, in retrospect about like the original Gulf War, that like it was CNN was manufacturing so much of that, right? Like so much of what you saw, I mean it like you look back on these clips now, and it was so fake, right? We've all seen those.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
where they're staging these things, and they're putting on the gas masks, and oh like this just happened, and it's fake, and we've seen it. Well, how much easier is it now? I mean, with AI to like show anything. And we just my point just being is that like I take it with a grain of salt that like anything is happening, because we're experiencing everything through a screen now. So
Yeah. Yeah. That is a fair point.
but
That is a fair
regardless,
point.
like whether these things like happen the way they're being reported or not, the outcome is like the same, right? Like we're screwed way more.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if it was real or not, and it doesn't matter if those weapons were actually used or not, or if that's just like what's being reported. Like the outcome is the same, as that like there that's like the script that we're going off of now. Like now we don't have the weapons. Now we definitely don't have the same access to energy.
Yeah, and it does tie, it's really interesting because it ties into like this wave of anti-Israeli sentiment that's in the US.
Mhm.
It's like comes right at a time when so many people, like podcasters, and are talking about this special relationship that the US has with Israel, and calling that out more so than we've ever seen before. And then right on the heels of that, we've got a war where, at the onset of this war, Marco Rubio said we got into this war because we knew Israel was about to attack, and so we had to get involved. The reason being, they didn't come out and say it, but the reason being is because the US, turned a blind eye. We allowed Israel to steal nuclear secrets from the U.S. Nuclear material was stolen from the U.S. And then we turned a blind eye when the Israel and South Africa tested a nuclear weapon in, I think it was 1979. It was called the Vela incident, but it was picked up on like seismic radar and stuff. So it's like, it's the US's fault that Israel has nuclear weapons. And so now it's our job to make sure they don't use them. That's the, reasoning behind Marco Rubio's statement. So it is interesting that this war happens right on the heels of all this, and it just kind of like fans the flames. It fans the sentiment that everyone's already talking about, which honestly, it shocked me. Like, because you've got the whole country talking about this, and then you've got this thing that's like agitating that conversation.
Well, absolutely. And I think, I think that this is, I think that this is how like the play to like accelerate these, like end times, we were talking about this pre-show, like these end times biblical prophecy type of thing. Well, the other thing that's happening right now, in addition to these like, this like rising tide of, sentiment against Israel and, whatever, is you also have, these, like major like religious revival, like, I mean, what is like, getting to be like cool now, right? What's becoming mainstream is like, people getting religious again, and these like, thousand and I'm not like denigrating anybody's beliefs or anything like this, but it feels like, a lot of this is, you have these like influencers, these, people, your Tucker Carlson's, Candace Owen, people like this that are like, okay, now, it like we're having this like religious revival at the same time as you're having this like political, like upheaval in that exact region where all of these religions originated from. It feels like there is this like, shift, and it feels to me like a lot of this is being manufactured. And it feels like, even like going back to October 7th, 3 years ago. Hard to believe that happened 3 years ago, but that like, like obviously that that was engineered and like allowed to transpire. Whatever did or didn't happen, like it was, it was a an event that was meant to catalyze this like other chain of events that's gone on since then, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think, I mean, it certainly didn't feel like or seem like that could possibly be an organic attack on Israel by these people with like very like very limited technologies against allegedly the most technologically intelligent military intelligence force
right.
in the world. Like, how could they not know that they were gonna hang
Mhm.
glide over these people? I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Run
beyond
through the fires and
it's beyond belief. Like like that event was orchestrated to like trigger all of the rest of these events. And in the midst of that, like I said, we're seeing this like crazy, I mean, I think you guys know what I'm talking about, this like crazy religious revival. So it seems like all of this is like really tied in on like and the acceleration of all of this technology and the AI and the UFO stuff. And so like at what point does all of this come into like this the second coming of Jesus or Messiah or the aliens, and like all of it happening in that exact location, in Israel? And like what is this really all about? So I that's kind of this like expanded, pulled out view. I think that there is so many layers of what this really is, and that this war is like some kind of like catalyst towards these other kinds of events, in a religious sense.
Well, it's scary for sure because, Israel definitely has 200 nuclear weapons or more. You've got Iran now, which
I'm sure they don't have those.
if Iran didn't want a nuclear weapon before, they damn sure want one now. Since the U.S.
Yeah.
just attacked them. So, I mean, the whole region is even more of a powder keg than it was just a few years ago. And I mean, some of this too, talking about this, in addition to this anti-Israeli sentiment that you have, you also have, I think, maybe people like Netanyahu and Trump are kind of leaning into the anti-Semitism a little bit, because like you had Netanyahu invite all
Absolutely.
of these influencers out to Israel right after Charlie was shot, and he's talking about the eighth front or the seventh front or whatever, the information wars. He's telling these influencers how Israel needs to buy TikTok. We need to influence X. He's calling them class. He's like, what do you class? And it's like, if Netanyahu had a PR person, they would say that's the worst thing you could possibly do, is invite a bunch of American influencers out here and talk to them like they're school children for the entire world to see. So it's like, from my perspective, it's like, maybe they don't care about what Americans think. Maybe they don't care about what the rest of the world thinks. Maybe the point of all of the anti-Semitism type stuff is to propagandize not only Jews living in Israel, but Jews in the diaspora all around the world, to be like, because all of this stuff, inevitably, when you look at it, if you're not a Jewish person, you look at these wars and you just think of Israel as evil, and so it's like, maybe the goal is to like make people kind of extremist against Israel, so they start sharing these memes, which some of them are legitimately hateful. Like if you get on X, there are people that are legitimately like hateful, or that just don't like Jews. And it's like, maybe that's the point, because then people can say to these Jews living in Israel and around the world, look, everyone hates us. You have to support. It's like if you're not with Israel, it's like, who are you with then? Maybe the point is to like propagandize them to support Israel. And that's something I kind of kick around.
Well, we've talked, we've actually, like, I don't know if you remember, but we've sort of hit on that point before, in our conversations, and I think that's exactly right. I mean, it's such an obvious, thing to like, generate. I mean, it's like, it's too like easy. It's too obvious that like, if you're playing this like evil, like villain character, like everybody sees it. It's, like you're not hiding it, it's so obvious. And it's like, there has to be, some element of like, yeah, we want to get everybody mad. We want to like shift the, like the cultural, zeitgeist, and to, to make it where, there is going, and I think that like, ultimately it's, it's all about these like, configurations of, like whatever type of holy war, is like, at the end game, is whatever, it's Armageddon in the valley of Megiddo, and Gog and Magog, and like this stuff in Revelation and these other biblical prophecies, that like these people, the Jews, the Catholics, the Muslims, the Christians, like everybody has their own version of what that end game is going to be for them, right? And that like it's all, it's all to accelerate whatever. I mean, I think that this is, it's like a script, and they're like, well, if we can, whatever faction, if we can like co-opt it, and steer it in our direction, then the outcome that we want is going to happen. And we can, ultimately engineer that outcome by like using AI anyways, to convince everybody that Jesus came back, or that like, the aliens are the Messiah, and, and they came back as, the new savior. And, we built the new temple, and that, and it drew the aliens down from, the Pleiadian, system, or, you know what I mean? Like whatever it is, like this to me, it just feels like so engineered to like produce these outcomes. And that like using these like groups, of these like, religious factions, and getting people like, once you get people so invested in like a narrative from a religious perspective, and being like, God says that I'm the right one, like, hey, my God is the right God, and my God says that I'm doing the right thing, and I'm the right one. I'm going to heaven, so whatever I do here is in furtherance of me and my people going to heaven. You know what I mean? Like anything is on the table, and so like yeah, you've got all these various factions that are all like playing the angle, to like bring this script that's thousands of years old into fruition, and somehow like this is the most convenient time for it to all happen because now we can fake it with AI, no matter what happened. So that's or there's really like aliens that are coming out, down, and that's like, the new Messiah, or like whatever the fuck, like
Yeah.
something's going on with all of this stuff, and these wars in this part of the world, that these conflicts have been going on for, I mean, think about like in, like the Crusades, like that was a similar thing of control of that part of the world. This feels like another version of the Crusades in a way, and like whoever's behind it, it's the play is something going on there, and something like biblical, something messianic, like whatever it is, and people are like pushing this forward deliberately on all sides.
Yeah. You talk about a modern crusade. There was a book my dad had. It was a book from around the time of World War I, and it just before the show we were talking about the history of Israel and the Balfour Declaration and how Britain, essentially bequeathed the land of Israel to the Israelis. I mean, really, if you look at the history and go further back too, it's the reason that the British had control over Palestine was because the Ottoman Empire controlled all of the Middle East, and the Ottomans were Turks, and the Arabs of the Middle East, they were upset at the Turks for a variety of reasons, but they basically colluded with the British, and they allowed the British to take over the entire Middle East. They didn't fight for the Ottomans. They handed the modern Middle East over to the British and the French, and then the British and the French drew up the lines of the Middle East, that you see today. So, the book that my dad had, it said for the first time since the defeat of Richard Lionheart by King Saladin, which was like in, I don't know, 1100 or 1400,
During the
British
Crusades. Yeah.
troops are now in Palestine. So it's like people do think about this stuff. The Crusades are very much alive, in people's memory. And I will just say too that with all of the the fire in the Muslim world against Israel, it's like if if the Arabs had a fought for the Turks, if the Arabs had have actually fought the British, the British just came in and did a classic divide and conquer thing. They took it in, and you wonder why Iran doesn't rise up and overthrow the Ayatollahs. Well, I mean the region is rife with stories like this where the West comes in and then destroys a country. I mean, it's really sad what happened to the Middle East. The Middle East, since the time of the Prophet Muhammad, was always one large caliphate. It was the Rashid Caliphate, the rightly guided caliphate, and then like the Abbasids and the Umayyads. But it was always one large empire, until today. And there's actually been, there's a movement called Pan-Arabism that was popular in like the 70s. Bashar Assad and Muammar Gaddafi in Libya and there was a real movement to try to unify the Middle East, and all of these leaders have mysteriously died. But no, the memory of the Crusades is very much alive in the leaders' minds.
Well, and who, and this is really interesting too, because like who was like leading the Crusades? It was the Templars, right? The Templars like are just still have like evolved into like the Jesuit order, right? I mean the was basically like the Reformation of the the Knights Templar order, was like Ignatius Loyola, basically resurrected the Templar order as the Jesuit order. You have, other like various other like secret, societies in, Freemasonry and things like this. Like they have like Templar orders and like, so the people who were like behind the Crusades, the Templars also like invented, we were talking about the central banks, we were talking about the Federal Reserve, like they invented those systems, the Knights Templars. So like um and this is a good point too, yeah, like about like the Crusades being a means, a vehicle of like destroying artifacts and rewriting history, and like who's gatekeeping what narratives, and controlling like a piece of land that for whatever reason is like so vital to all of these different you know uh belief systems, that like everybody, everybody's got to like control this one. And I mean, it's a small ass place in the world, you know what I mean?
Well, not
Like
just
it's
that, but like King Solomon's temple, like the actual
right.
Temple Mount where the Blue Mosque is, where there's a Christian church right there where Jesus was, I don't know, crucified or so. It's like all of these three. It's like this, not just the country of Israel, but this one small, like 1
Exactly.
kilometer, like
No,
tiny
exactly,
little.
dude. It's all that is like the epicenter of like everything that's going on. And it just feels like with again when you see that there is this like really big time like religious revival being think like, I think that this is like, you were talking about the pendulum swinging, right? Like you were talking about like the woke stuff. Like I think that one of the like reasons that this woke stuff was like so heavily engineered was to swing the pendulum to create like this cultural environment where people were like so demoralized by seeing all this like depravity and like degraded stuff, and like like say like in 2022, like the peak of like the really gnarly like pride like June 2022 was insane, and are we agreeing on that, like that this was like, that was like peak of like the pride woke culture, more or less?
2022.
Like yeah, let's say like like what we saw going on in these like every city in these parades in June of 2022 for that month, like radicalized people. And that was like the peak of all of that, in the wake of like all of the COVID crazy stuff, in the wake of the BLM stuff, like it culminated, this like cultural milieu, like culminated in like this insane like pride stuff, with the kids at the at the pride parades, and the drag queen story art. Like 2022 I think was the peak of that, and since then I really feel like you've seen the pendulum shift to where like people are like, no, we're going to church, we're going, we're reading the Bible, we're doing this, because this was so unwholesome, this was so satanic, that like the answer is obviously to become religious. I mean, dude, like I experienced it in my own life. I'll be honest with you, like things got like so crazy where like I was like, wow, I think I need to like look to some kind of religious sort of like institution or tradition to like combat whatever's going on. I was also living in Portland at the time, so it was like really like the peak, but
Yeah.
Pride parade
but
every week.
I
Yeah.
mean, like it was as crazy as it got, but you know what I'm saying? Like you're like, okay, what's the opposite of that culture? Like the pendulum switch, shift is like this other like religious austerity, and to like form community. It's also like a communal thing, right? Like we're gonna we are alienated by what's going on in our communities, on this side. We're gonna go and like join together with other like-minded people in these religious communities that are against that.
Yeah, I myself, same thing. Like I've helped my buddy clean out a storage unit. I found a Bible, and I was like, oh, do you mind if I have this? He was like, no, and I started reading it. It would have been around that same time, a little after. I do think there is and we see this pendulum swing a lot. You have Reagan in the 80s with this conservative movement, and then you got Bill Clinton in the 90s, and then back to the Republicans, and one side just blames the other. And really nothing changes at the end of the day. Nothing. You talk about Habsburg, you brought up, was the war even real? It's like sometimes I think about shit like that. It's like you could live your whole life and not know about the war in Iran, or any of these foreign entanglements or whatever. It's like whoever's in the White House, it's like, how does it really affect your life? Like, it doesn't. If we invade Iran or we don't, it's like the price of gas might go up, but it doesn't like drastically affect what's going on in your life.
Or in a lot of ways it does, whether you know it or not. You know what I mean? Like whether you're like engaged in it, like the circumstances that are like dictating how much you pay for things, like what things are available to you, like where you can and can't go, like stuff like that. Like it impacts you a lot, like whether or not it's real, and whether or not you're like personally engaged in any like knowledge of it. Like it totally impacts your direct circumstance to that degree, right?
I suppose. I just mean, like, okay, like let's suppose Kamala Harris got elected. Like, how much different would your life be today? Like, it would probably be about the same. We'd probably still get a war in Iran. Like,
Oh,
it's like these
absolutely.
things that we argue about and quibble about and pay attention about. It's like they're a lot of them are just like distractions.
Oh, absolutely. And the idea of whoever is like sitting in the White House, like it's as much of it is about like getting people like pissed off at that regime, as much or more so of like people getting like being in support of it. It's like oh, we're ready for a change. Like I remember 2008, people were so pissed off, right? Like after 8 years of Bush Jr. like all they were saying was change. Like nobody was like, what's going to actually change? They were just like, change.
Any Democrat would have won in 08. Any
Yeah,
Democrat.
yeah,
Doesn't
of
matter
course.
who.
And they put the perfect guy up there, I mean, it was like, it was just like that was the face, and I remember, and I'm, I like, I was at the time like almost 30 years old, and I remember like, a lot of, my peers, people were passionate about that guy. And I've only voted in one presidential election ever. That was in, when I was 18 in 2000. And I was like, well, I saw how that went. I'm never doing it again because this is fake, But like I remember in 2008 and like watching people, and I'm like, I'm not voting for one guy or the other, but like people like really, being like, oh my God, like this is who I am. I'm this, like this guy is me, like change. I have hope and I have change. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like people really like, wore that.
Yeah. And even John McCain, like there were things he could have brought up to hurt Obama. Like his middle name was Hussein. He went to like a madrasa. There is some weird stuff about his family and his citizenship
Oh,
and his
yeah.
early years. Like there's some stuff in Obama's past that's weird. And it's like John McCain wouldn't touch any of it. And it's like that's kind of your job as the opposite political candidate. But it's almost like it's almost like McCain was in on it it's like, here, you can have this
Sure.
young, charismatic black guy whose messages change, or you could have this stuffy old white guy who, is probably,
regardless
it's
if
like,
he was a vet and like, POW and all that stuff. He's just a cranky old white guy. That's all people saw.
yeah,
Some people.
it's like the worst possible candidate you could have put up as a Republican. And then, Sarah Palin, who is just an idiot, a hot chick.
Paired up with, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's, it's like these things, like you said, like, and if McCain, for whatever reason, had been the guy who ended up in the White House, would things have gone any different? Like, no, they wouldn't have, because that's the script, like it had to go the way that it went, then, and whoever's the face, in the White House is, that's who like, we ascribe these, these things to, in a historic sense, but like it doesn't really matter, because like, it's just somebody sitting there as like the placeholder for whatever's happening.
I think every president since Kennedy is acutely aware that they could take a bullet to the head if they don't do what they're told.
Fair point.
I think, or get pulled, by a coup like Nixon, with the CIA, orchestrates a burglary, and it's like all presidents are acutely aware that if they don't play ball, bad things will happen to them, I believe.
I mean, and or they're like, hey, we intend for this stuff to happen. We have no intention of like going against it, because we want these things to happen, whatever the script is, not just the threat of like something bad happening, but like, hey, this is like what we intend to have happen. We want it that way. But yeah, I mean, I think, I think one way or the other, like what's going on right now is, it's bringing us closer to some really like bad, dark things that, are somehow relate to, these like ancient prophecies, and not in a good way. People I think are like, some people are like, yeah, this is, we're like this much closer to salvation and this and that. But like, I see it as being like, something, like the inverse of that.
Oh yeah, like the Christian Zionists that support Israel because they want to start World War
Yeah,
III. It's like that's crazy. That's
right.
insane. Pete
It's insane.
Hegseth, he had a Crusader tattoo on his chest, and before the Iran war, he gave a speech where he told these Marines or airmen or sailors, he was like, "You're helping fulfill biblical prophecies." It's like, dude, fucking stop. Like, I just want to live my life. I just want to raise my kid. I just want to go to work and have a good life. Like, I don't really want a nuclear holocaust. Like, that doesn't sound like fun, like.
No, it's fucked up, dude. You want to have food that you can afford. You want to be able to put gas in your tank and be able to like drive somewhere cool. I mean, you don't want to get like locked in and, have to put on the Oculus and, live in
Yeah.
Ready Player One world. You know what I mean? Like you want to have like a real life and, be free and afford the things, that make life good in the
And not
real
eat bug
world.
meat.
Not eat bug meat, dude.
Not eat
Like,
bug meat.
Right.
Fuck Bill Gates.
like all of those things, like that's, it to me, like all of this stuff is, bringing us just that many steps closer to those things. And, we think like, well, oh, it's like it, if it, if it's like the UN or the WF or this or that saying like, oh, don't eat meat for this reason, or, don't use gas for this reason. But like, well, if it's because, a war, dictates those terms, and, and we're like subject to them, the outcome is the same. That big guy.
I'm
That big
making that
tub. That big
I'm
guy.
making that the title of my video on YouTube.
All
CIA
right.
pineapple psyop.
This
I liked
was,
it.
I think we'll wrap it up here. This was a awesome chat. I think we should definitely, I know we have a lot going on in the summer, but I think when things cool down, we should try and make this a more regular thing, like a weekly thing, because this is a lot of fun. And I think it's cool. We covered a lot of topics. We'll maybe, if you guys are available, we can do it again next week. I'd love to do that. We did want to get into a bunch of other stuff. We'll save some of it for next time. I just wanted to throw out a few things that I kind of found over today that I wanted to get into. just with Trump and all his bad decisions and losing the war, I just wanted to kind of focus on all this money that him and his family is still making. He was, I don't know if you guys heard, he was gifted this crazy diamond ring from the, what do you call it? The Belgium, essentially, because of they have the Antwerp, the diamond region going on there, and they basically gave it to him to symbolize like the tariff relief because they were having such a tough time, and it's such a blatant, I don't know, it's really unsettling.
He made $2 billion last year.
Isn't
Something
that
crazy?
Isn't the U.S. playing Belgium too right now? About to in the World Cup?
Are they? Okay.
I could be wrong about that, but I think that's right. So that seems like an interesting coincidence.
Yeah, fair enough. Also, we should maybe get into more about how he made another billion over, I think, I don't know what the timeline is, but I think it's over the last year on crypto deals. Meanwhile, his fans and his supporters all lost money. Some lost a fortune. There's also the instances of his sons and his family and all the companies and stuff they're involved with. There's another one now with Trump Jr., Donald Trump Jr., a grab a gun company. They're trying to boost internet gun sales, and there's this new law that they're trying to change, and it all benefits his family or his friends. What else was there?
Drone warfare, the
Yes,
changing warfare tactics.
warfare,
That's gonna be a great one.
But just with finishing off with Trump, just people know how ridiculously corrupt Trump is. So there's a family in Brazil, the Bolsonaro family, and I guess the father is in jail in the U.S. and the son is trying to run for president of Brazil, the head of Brazil, so that he could chum up with Trump and get his dad out. So I thought that was interesting. Also, a story that I didn't want to talk about was the Taylor Swift wedding, but two interesting things that I found was one, there's this new Taylor Swift tax that people should look into. It's to do with housing and just essentially, rich people and celebrities are just buying all these houses and they're not using them and affecting the economy, so they have to make this new tax for brats like her. And then also they've got all this fucking money, and apparently they're hitting over for New York, I think it is. Yeah, New York, because they're doing the reception or whatever at Madison Square Garden, over $1 million taxpayer bill for security to protect her and all her fucking celebrity friends for the wedding and the rehearsal and all that. And I just thought that was just disgusting. So I thought I'd highlight that.
They're doing Taylor Swift's wedding in Madison Square Garden right after the Knicks just won the championship there too. See, all of this stuff, all of that stuff is related. The World Cup, the NBA,
man, yeah,
all of that stuff is part of the script.
Just they want, yeah, dude, yeah.
You
got that right. You got that right, man. They want America to be essentially like a Hollywood, Washington hybrid, yeah, exactly.
It's a movie. Like all of this is like movie. A big production.
America's a movie. Exactly. Yeah. That's a better way to put it. Exactly. And then something that we should I'd be interested to start getting into is like Japan and China and everything going on with Taiwan and everything. But apparently a Tibetan man set himself on fire outside the UN in New York due to stuff going on with China and Tibet. So that was pretty crazy too. Just kind of flashes you back to memories of the monk who set himself on fire. But yeah, all that. And then, like Adam was saying, we wanted to get into drone warfare as well. Obviously, drones are making like a huge impact, especially with the war in Iran and especially with Ukraine-Russia war. So a lot of interesting stuff going on there when you look into like the numbers and the figures and stuff with money that's being burnt and just the crazy different technologies they have. Yeah, we'll have to get into that stuff next time. Any other final words before we wrap it up, guys? Habsburg, anything you want to say?
That bit that big guy.
Yeah, man, that's the best thing I've learned tonight. Adam, what you got for us?
I would like to mention I've never noticed this before, but it looks like you have some turtle plushies in the background, and I think those are looking really nice. For those of you that don't know, Jordan's a big turtle guy. That's why he's got turtles on his thumbnails. I always wondered that, and I asked him about it, and he says he's got lots of pet turtles. So very cool. He also did not know that turtles will attack black shoes, but not white shoes. I had to send him that video, and now since I looked that up. Every time I open my phone and scroll, I get a same video of that same turtle attacking a black shoe.
Nice, Jordan. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Oh, anything even better, man.
So turtles are not into Kool-Aid pineapple spears, huh?
No, they're not going to Church's Chicken.
No, they ain't going to Church's Chicken. This was fun, guys. I had a lot of fun. Let's we'll be in touch, but let's if you guys are available next week sometime, let's do it again. Adam, where can everyone find you, man, before we let you
go? YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, at the TruthDesk or at TruthDesk. Just look for my Truth logo and you can find me.
Right on, man. Well, thanks for your time, buddy. Always a pleasure. And yeah, we'll talk to you tomorrow. And yeah, let's set something up again soon, man. Always a fucking pleasure.
Same to you guys, Habsburg, Jordan. Great to talk to you guys. I always enjoy our conversations.
Me too, man. Me too.
Hey, dude, have a beer and a dog for me, buddy. Okay.
Yeah, have a good 4th of July, man. Enjoy the time with your family.
I will. I'll have a good Memorial Day, as you call it.
Okay, that's enough.
All right, take care, guys. It was great.
Day there, buddy. Later, dude. All right, guys. That was a lot of fun, man. We'll definitely have to do that again. Make sure everyone to subscribe to Divulgence Podcast. Of course, we have the iPad giveaway. We're trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers, which I don't know, man. I feel like YouTube's making that a little difficult, if I'm not gonna lie. So subscribe on YouTube. Send the screenshot to divulgencemail@gmail.com and you'll be entered in to win. We also have some runner-up prizes. I was thinking we'd do some books, maybe some different books of guests that have been on the show, or I can give you your choice of a Kubrick Criterion Collection, something like that. But yeah, also if you anyone you want to refer, I'll give you guys 5 bonus entries in addition to them being entered. So yeah, man.
Third prize is Kool-Aid pineapple jars.
Yes, yeah. Oh, there you go, man. There you go. You get to pick the flavor, and Habsburg will set you up because I don't know if we have all those crazy fucking flavors here in Canada. I don't think you can get them.
Oh shit, yeah, dude. That's definitely like a US op.
That's it. Yeah.
It's exotic.
Yeah, man, big time. That's crazy, dude. Oh, just slurping that. Oh, crazy, man. You haven't tried it. You haven't tried that.
No.
Good.
No,
Okay.
I like pineapple, but
sure.
I'm gonna get an organic pineapple and cut it
up. I
eat
actually love pineapple too. I always core it and like I cut it into the spears and everything. So And pineapple is already very sugary and sweet, man. So
Dude, it's the sweetest, like, it's
it's
crazy. It's got some,
yeah. So I don't know.
you don't need it doctored up. But
Yeah, it's almost worse than the Tide Pods, in my opinion. Holy cow!
it's the next phase of Tide Pod. But I'm telling you, dude, you're gonna see this everywhere now that I mentioned. We're gonna have to revisit it
Yeah,
because
probably.
it
We
goes a
will.
little deeper. There's
Definitely.
there's another layer to it. And we'll get into that.
All right. I guess that's it. Other than you can also catch us on Rumble, Spotify, Apple, wherever you guys get your podcasts. Thanks to everyone in the audience in the chat. Had a lot of fun in the chat today. And just to help us out in the those algorithms that we talked about, throw us a thumbs up, a comment, a heart, or whatever it is, whatever app or platform you're on, a 5-star review. It all helps. Yeah, I think that's about it, man. Anything else, Habsburg, before we wrap her up?
No, man, that was fun. It's cool and just sort of like have a free flow.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I agree. Cool, man. All right. Thanks to everyone, and we'll catch you guys next time. Peace and love.